What's up, y'all? I'm Deeg. Welcome to Basement Side. This is the weekly show where we sit down and talk about what's going on in gaming and how we as gamers ought to contend with what's going on in gaming. This week, um, so I had a great show last week with some really cool discussion. I'm going to start off in just a moment by going over some comments from that show that I want to give a response to here. And then after that, we're going to launch into a very fat agenda that is loosely themed around MMOs. There were a few things that I caught in the last week that really pinged my attention as things I want to talk about. And we're going to get to those things. But let's start off with some comments. So first, okay. I want to highlight a comment from TheLootist, who commented on last week's show, specifically about the Skyblivion footage that we showed. So I'm actually going to pull this comment out and show a little bit of Skyblivion while I read the comment. So there are a few things, comments that I made about what to expect in terms of production quality and just some sort of things that I was looking out for, and he responded to a few of those things. But here's the lovely game. TheLootist responds, I'm on the dev team for Skyblivion. I'll answer some of your points you made during your footage. There is no ENB in this footage. All lighting and effects are in engine, not using any external injectors. You could use our current build and get this exact experience. The assets you mentioned at the beginning are all custom-made assets. The bushes and mace are in-house from our team, and the grass is from some very popular Skyrim mods using 2K textures for the grass. The grass has since been updated to be much brighter, which can be seen here in this thread. So what he's talking about is actually, I paused almost exactly at this spot, and I'm going to hide my face so you can see on the lower right screen. I was wondering, looking at these flowers, some of the grass, like how much of this is like actual new assets versus that the team has produced versus how much are they reusing from Skyrim? I think that information can tell us a little bit about how serious this project is. And from what TheLootist is saying, it sounds like it's all new stuff. And seeing how well it hangs together, well, that impressed me. The other thing that impressed me is understanding that what we're seeing here on the screen doesn't have any ENB. Now, if you don't know what ENB is, I won't put too much time into explaining it, but basically, it makes Skyrim look real pretty, but it makes the game run, in my opinion, real bad. So there's no ENB here, all custom assets, and it looks fantastic. TheLootist goes on to say the rocks we use, you'd be right in saying they're Skyrim assets. In many situations with new 4K textures. Like you said, with the weird green texture, that's been darkened. So the grass, which was too light, and the ground texture, way too neon green, now match. The design of this mine is completely different from the original. Underwater combat's important for Oblivion, as several quests rely on it, so we had to remake it. So here's the rock textures that TheLootist was highlighting, which I mentioned in my reaction as well. And then we're about to plunge into the dungeon itself, which is apparently not a remake of the Oblivion dungeon. One of the things that I called out in my commentary is that Oblivion dungeons kind of sucked, and I'm not sure how much we really need to recreate them. And I'm pleased that the Skyblivion team is not is allowing themselves creative license to make something a little more interesting. The quest was prepared for this trailer, as it's one of the few you can play through in fully remastered levels. One of the few you can play through in fully remastered levels. Thinking about that for a second. Let's continue though. For years, our team worked on a quest conversion tool that would attempt to automatically convert all the scripts for quests. Okay, makes sense. But now we've dropped this as it takes too long to fine-tune this tool. A lot of quests are in a partial working state because of this tool, which was saved a lot of time. It's now a matter of fixing them up by hand to ensure they work. For instance, we have a fair amount of progress as you can now complete the Dark Brotherhood from start to finish with the use of no console commands. Sorry, with no use of console commands is what he said. Dark Brotherhood, fucking hype. One of the most fun and interesting quest chains in all RPGs. When Skyblivion comes out, one of the main things I'm going to be looking forward to is replaying that Dark Brotherhood quest chain with these level visuals. That'll be a treat. That little anecdote about automation was interesting. I did follow up and ask for a little more detail from TheLootist, and it sounds like they were able to port some baseline data for a lot of quests, but that essentially the job to completely automate all the quest porting from Oblivion into Skyblivion needed a little more help that they weren't able to get. You know, this being a fan project, people who want to contribute come and go, makes sense, and it required a lot of deep knowledge of Oblivion scripts to actually pull it off. But it sounds like this guy, TheLootist himself, actually did the level design on the farm. So all this, let's start from the beginning. This is the real good stuff. Look at that. He's a level designer on the project, mainly at least. TheLootist did some other bits like the grass, and also getting some assets set up in the engine. But he's very pleased to hear that I like the area around the farm is what he worked on. There are a lot of little things to discover in the wilderness, and something we've prided ourselves on to improve on what Oblivion did, which was very little compared to Skyrim in terms of unmarked locations, hidden chests, notable finds, etc. It's definitely worth exploring these areas if you're looking to explore. That's catnip to me, maybe. I love to hear that. Some of the dungeons will be like this where it's a complete reimagining and completely different and have that wow factor. Others are more faithful recreations and not all of that wow factor. So the wow factor, I think maybe what he's talking about is specifically here. This room gave me a major wow factor. I'm actually going to unmute the audio so you can hear it too. It's worth it. Those little like moments are one of the things that I think Elder Scrolls games do in a way that is fairly unique compared to all other, even Western RPGs. I get that there might not be developer time to do that for every single dungeon, but I hope they get that moment for as many of them as you can, because it makes you feel like you've actually found something. It makes you feel like your mission to explore was successful, like it was worth your time. Here he's actually going to a side passage. Pay that off as well. Okay. The reason that they didn't show off a more iconic quest is because they can't be completed in all the remastered content yet. Emperor's robes have concept art, but no 3D models yet. The Blade's armor is in the works on the 3D side. They might be able to show the jailbreak in the future, but not yet. Yeah, I commented saying that it would have been very cool to see a more iconic quest. And hopefully that's forthcoming in the future. And everything he said makes sense. Like, what is the saying that a video game is like only looks the way that it does at release in the final weeks before it actually comes out? And everywhere up until then, it's all just gore and wireframes and blank textures and not something that actually immerses you whatsoever. It's a big act of faith working on video games in that way. Okay, that's the end of his comment. Anything else I want to highlight here? He said a lot of people think that they use ENB for lighting, and it all comes from their very talented lighting artist who spent a lot of time perfecting the lighting presets for weathers. I'd say that he's onto something there. Well, thanks to TheLootist for leaving that lovely comment. Love the, if anyone else has comments on the forthcoming discussion today, feel free to drop them on the video and we'll maybe talk about them on the next show. Okay, next. Next, we have a comment from RussellThePumpkin. This actually came beforehand, but this is going to take a little more time, so I saved it. And he commented on the reaction we did to Commander Sirius's in defense of skilled players video, which I'm trying to locate. And I'm going to show that as B-roll while I read over the comment. Okay. RussellThePumpkin says, I'm really looking forward to tuning in every week. I think I commented last year that I'd love to hear more from you, just you, because you have so many interesting opinions and ideas. So it's very cool that you decided to start this. Thank you, Russell. That really warms my heart to hear that. I clearly have a lot of things I want to say, and I love doing the interviews where I get to actually talk to people and learn about what they think. But I'm starting to love the opportunity to sit down and talk about just what I think too. So, as with all things I do, it's an experiment, and we'll iterate on it over time. Let's see how it goes. Continuing on, I just want to share a couple of thoughts in relation to the Sirius video. You said during his first clip of the flying hacker, the new players may have trouble distinguishing this from legitimate play. This is one issue that I took with Sirius's video. It seems to suggest that there's no cheating problem in Planetside, which may be true from his perspective as someone who primarily plays on Emerald these days. However, Soltech and Connery currently do have issues with cheaters. And I don't think the blanket statement of Planetside has no cheating problem is a helpful one, when for some new players on some servers, when their lived experience is going to tell them the exact opposite. It's a good point, man. I don't got a lot to add to that. I think that when Sirius talks about cheaters, he's really trying to, in some ways, I think, offer a retort to an unsophisticated argument. Like the idea that Planetside is full of cheaters. Like, yeah, it does have cheaters, of course. All free-to-play games do. But I think that there's a temptation to want to account for when you lose a fight or when someone beats you in a 1v1 to say, hey, that person's cheating. I'm losing because there are cheaters fighting against me. When a lot of time it's not because they're not cheating. They're just using some piece of equipment that gives them a unique advantage. There's a lot of rock, paper, scissors in Planetside. Or because they have better position than you, better movement than you, better aim than you. Like, he's encouraging people to take more responsibility for the outcomes of their gameplay. I think that's what the series is really going for. Which is not to say that you're not correct, Russell. You totally are. That he probably did undersell the problem of cheating a little bit. Continuing on, one of the strengths of Planetside is it's an open world, fluid state where players can freely move around to different fights whenever they feel like it. However, when there's a cheater on a server, this actually becomes an issue because unlike in a lobby-based shooter where you can just leave the match and find a new one, in Planetside, you will repeatedly encounter that cheater over the course of a night and can really ruin a play session. In addition, even though the cheater is usually banned within 24 hours, because accounts can be made freely and easily, they are always back the next night on a brand new account. Planetside may not have a problem with the number of cheaters, but it does have a problem with how it controls and addresses those cheaters. It's unlikely to happen, but he'd love to see a return to the days of Sony Online Entertainment when we had GMs actively monitoring servers at night, banning any blatant cheaters that popped up. My second thought in relation to that video was in terms of skill balls, or rather the accumulation of good players on one faction. Sirius didn't really go into this in the video, but I do think it's a problem within the game at the moment. VS is the dominant faction during alerts on most servers, mostly because they have the best infantry players, alerts being mostly based around point holds. The health of an MMO often comes down to the strength of the relationships between players on a server, and I think Planetside is similar in this regard. Relationships require an equal amount of give and take to work, otherwise they break down and people leave. Having played other MMOs where the PvP scene died because one group accumulated the best players on the server and destroyed everyone, I'm a little worried about whether we're seeing a similar situation playing out in Planetside. In those MMOs, the lower skilled players ask the higher skilled players to consider splitting their groups, not queue stacking, and the high skilled group responded with, lol, just get good. The PvP scene died shortly after. As you and Sirius pointed out, not everyone has the time or interest in becoming the best player they can. Many just want to play casually for fun or the social experience. So I don't believe the solution should just be for those players to get good like so many of these skilled groups claim. Skilled players are just ordinary players like everyone else and have no extra responsibility to ensure the health of their server. But I do think a little more give from some of those groups would have a very positive impact for everyone else playing with and against them. And if the end result is that their server pop stays healthier for longer, then it's also benefiting them. Even something as simple as a skilled outfit switching to a different faction one night a week to try and balance skill a little better across the entire server would have a great impact and would also give these skilled players more challenging fights. Fantastic comment. Alex. Sorry, comment. Yeah. Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. Okay. Okay. So there's this follow-up to this comment too. I'm playing right now, Lex, with reading comments to previous week's videos here on the following week's stream. We're going to see how this goes. RussellThePumpkin left a really detailed video responding to my response to Sirius's video about in defense of skilled players. Not sure if you caught that one. Anyway, I responded. I'm not going to read it word for word, but I'm just going to go over a couple of the high points. I said in my response, and I might just save this for the video next week rather than actually writing a response. You can't do an in defense of skilled players video when you advocate for a 1-2 headshot multiplier. I didn't know he did that. Interesting. Well, my read on the cheater thing is that RPG just doesn't have the manpower, which kind of sucks. In a lobby shooter, you can just leave the game, but not in Planetside. Ideally, there would be someone who just watches the servers for cheater reports and can act in minutes. I guess that would be 3 someones for global coverage, which is like a 10% expansion of the company. And would it be worth it? I think we can interpret from the current state that it has not been worth it to RPG. I once thought something like Outfit Wars could be a way to distract skill balls from the live sandbox for a while. The 2021 implementation of the format has some promise here, but among the skill ball set, and this is me commenting, I don't think there's much excitement for its return. And that shared sentiment matters. Skill balls form in the first place because skill-focused players want to play with other skill-focused players. It seems like just a matter of entropy for one faction to eventually contain most of them. As for how to fix it, I guess it's carrot or stick, but I don't think there's any reward RPG can offer to persuade players from pursuing a good fight with their friends. And on the stick, well, you can go for a Planetside 1 style 12-hour faction lockout, but since the game is free to play, I don't know how much that would do. Another outlier experience I can think of is when mega outfits flood a lane with 96 plus and grind any semblance of an enjoyable fight to a standstill. This, the skill ball, cheaters, all only become large problems when you just can't go somewhere else. I've found that a lot of my best memories from Planetside come from times when I found myself in one of those outlier experiences and managed to pull off something clever or lucky, especially when doing it with friends. And what I ask myself is, would smoothing down the sandbox be worth losing those moments? Sometimes I think so, sometimes not. And the last thing I added was to say that there is one common way that would address all these problems, simply, and it's growth. Growth is the fastest way to evolve all parts of the game. More money, more developers, more players, more outfits. It's a lot to ask from an 8-year-old game, but it's got one thing going for it. It's still one of a kind. Left it on a high note. Lex is saying they need to just incorporate a 6v6 or 12v12 battleground system into the game. Just get it over with. It solves 2 things. It gives the players that want to do something they actually want to do instead of playing the live dog shit gameplay. And removes a big pool of big bad people who can aim their gun. You give the skilled players what they want and give the shitters what they want at the same time. Yeah, I mean, That's kind of what I thought Outfit Wars was going to do. It seems like it's taking a different approach, though. Um, I think that when talking about this same idea last year, my response is, well, the community is making 6v6 and 12v12 leagues, and maybe it's better to let the community run those things. But the tools the community has to do that are just they exist, and that says a lot. That required some work from the developers, but they're not really robust and refined. Outfit Wars is not that. It just makes people that are usually not sweaty forcibly sweaty. It makes the gameplay and live servers worse than usual. Just saying something. Lex with the positivity tonight. Yeah, when I was re-engaging with Planetside in 2019, I was on a Reddit thread, and one of the things that was talking about was just I can't remember the context, but I remember feeling and writing a sentiment talking about how one of the main things in Planetside that I thought it was still really desperately needed, and I'm sad it had never figured out, was how to get the sweaty big gun players kind of motivated to do something that prevents them from preying on the main fights. It's I think that if the game is expanding and big enough, it's okay to just let sweaty players sweat all over everything, because there's always more people coming in, servers are opening up. But in a game where the play space is either static or contracting, um, it's not an easy problem to solve. I mean, for me, like, it's no problem for me to say, oh, I got dominated by this player. They're a god. I should go get good. Or if I don't want to get good, just say fuck it and find a fight where that person's not there. But I don't curse a player for stomping me. Like, they put in the time. They got good. And I respect that. It's not an easy issue. Just putting in like a 6v6 or 12v12 mode seems like it would mitigate it, but at the same time, it puts Planetside in a weird space where it's like putting in a mode that kind of eats the lunch of what a lot of other games already do very well. Like, I'm thinking of like Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Escape from Tarkov. Like, if you really try to do what those games already do well, my read on it is that Planetside never gonna compete. So making a mode that is not really gonna grow, it's just there to save unaware or new players from getting stomped. I'm not really sure, like, from a development resources perspective, if it makes sense, like, if it's worth the effort. Anyway, it's a tough one. And one of the things that I'm seeing pop up too is actually there's a new competition that Schachter's is hosting on his stream, where he's doing a showdown between a couple players where they fight for farming 100 kills on live, and the first player to farm 100 kills wins. It's exactly like, it takes the idea of seal clubbing in Planetside and makes it a competition. It makes more sense than doing things like Sanctuary and other nonsense. It actually addresses a real problem and not some red herring garbage. Yeah, I mean, I think that I see your point, Lex. I think to accept that is kind of like accepting Planetside where it is. It's like saying, like, we have this world, we have this thing. It is what it is. We know what it's good at. We know what it's not good at. Why worry about some future state where the game might be bigger? Take what it does well now and try to fix the big problems. But I think that the developers, and I think developers in general of live services games, take an approach, and maybe they have to take an approach where they're not just trying to fix the current game. They're trying to create the future game, and not try to create fixes that are going to prevent the future game from coming to pass. Or either literally by creating a system that can't persist, that's just wasted effort down the road, or just in terms of gobbling up resources. What in your mind does the game do really well? Planetside Lex. I'm curious what your take on what that thing is. Your thing is it certainly hasn't been tried yet. Yeah, and that's a fair point. What if there was a side mode called Squad Wars? You know, not Outfit Wars, Squad Wars. It's a Battlefield game with scale. Lead into that. But if you create a side mode that is a restricted scale and at the small level, is that leaning into it? It's honestly not something I really want to argue against because I myself would love to see something like that. I think it would also help increase the legibility of Planetside to non-Planetside players to see, oh, this game has like a 6v6 and 12v12 mode. It has like a smaller scale mode. And there are some really good players playing it. And here are some casts of it. Yeah, it's not something I really want to fight against, like a fight with you on, Lex, because I fundamentally agree with you. Like, I would like to see that in the game. I guess where I find myself sitting is like in an apologistic stance to the developers, because I know that they bust ass. Like, it's not a question of working hard enough. And I want to think well of their efforts. And for some reason, this has never been a focus. And I don't get the sense it will be. And I think for what it's worth, that's something of what we see from Sirius too. He's just trying to get the developers' backs a little bit. I'm gonna read the rest of Russell's comment here. League Game Designer doesn't treat it as such. It's a fundamental problem. That's why I don't fix anything. You know, maybe a good question to ask Rel is why they don't do a mode like this. If I have him back on again, which I hope happens sometime later this year. We haven't talked about it at all, but it's just an idea that I have. Then I'll definitely ask him that. Yeah, if he says it detracts from live play, then like there's kind of a built-in retort in the game right now from Outfit Wars, right? So it's like, well, it's not that it's like a black and white thing. It's like a shade of gray. So what's too much outside the main game and what's not? Okay, so RussellThePumpkin said he agrees that the natural imbalances of the game are what makes it special. I was listening to your interview with Recursion the other night and really connected with what they said near the end about the three-way and their differences with very large outfits like Space Pigs. Yes, it can lead to unfair and frustrating experiences at times, but it also delivers a lot of new challenges that you don't get in any other game. I think the Recursion guys had a great mindset. That was a great interview. A lot of fun. In terms of recognizing the skill disparity between them and their opponents and understanding that the other side's going to find ways to adapt, either by using force multipliers or a population advantage, or even some kind of temporary alliance with the other faction. Be nice, Lex. Accepting that these are things that will happen when you have a skill imbalance on the battlefield and not using it as a chance to belittle your opponents is a very healthy mindset to have. I agree. On Soltech, my outfit usually has a couple of squads on an ops night. For us, one of the big challenges is finding ways to impact the battlefield when so many of our competitors can bring 5 times our number in reply, knowing that we will probably lose a fight, but sucking up as much population as possible, for as long as possible, to give a net advantage to the rest of our faction is a goal that is pretty unique to Planetside, and you'll always want to see those types of engagements in the game. The alpha should have been blacklisted when what they did in 2014. You're talking about recursion, Lex? The problem is when the gap between the skilled side of the server and the casual side of the server grows too large, and the give and take in the relationship breaks down. Again, going back to that recursion interview, you guys briefly touched on the difference between their match and Cobalt's gold match. I think that server is a clear example of where the gap between the two sides of the server was widened to an unfun and unplanetside degree. Their Alpha 2 result was even quicker than their first one, I believe, and reading their explanations about why they stacked so hard makes it clear that they aren't going to stop playing that way anytime soon. From their perspective, they want Planetside to be 1v1 ultra competitive esports style game where their opponent has the same skill level and mindset as they do. Their expectation is that the rest of the server get good in response to their dominance, but the reality is that the rest of the casual player base just ends up thinking, wait, I've been playing this game for 8 years the same way. Why should I suddenly be expected to know life it in order to reach the same level as you in a much shorter time? We're starting to see the consequences of that kind of insane, unnatural skill disparity on Cobalt, where the rest of the server either stops engaging with that group altogether or simply moves to a different server to find an enjoyable experience. All players, but in particular skilled players, because of how they can make an unskilled player feel simply by playing the game, have a responsibility to treat each other with respect and an understanding that the health of the server is all about relationships you build with your opponents. When that relationship breaks down, has the potential to kill a server, as he's unfortunately witnessed firsthand in other MMOs. Always appreciate the time you take to read and reply to my posts on your videos. And I just commented that it was always a pleasure to read such well-considered comments like these, which it is. I encourage y'all to leave comments on this video. All right, now let's see what Lex has been saying. Give him a break. Anyway, his questions always to these people is the stuff they threw in our faces for all these years. Why don't you go play a game with matchmaking then, akin to the Go Play COD? Yeah. Well, Lex, let me put it to you. Why didn't you just go play COD? What was your reason for wanting to get good at Planetside when you cared about that? Which I think it's fair to say you're a bit past at the moment. I'm not sure. You do play everything else. Well, what keeps you stuck on Planetside? Is it just the viewers at this point? Community, for the most part. Do you think that Planetside does community in a way that's unique compared to those other games? The Overwatches, the Counter Strikes, the Tarkovs, the Battlefields. Not the Planetside community. Talking about AC. Yeah. I mean, AC is a Planetside community, though. I mean, I guess not 100%. There, at one point, AC was a multi-game group, right? When I was in AC, they were a multi-game group. It was an air outfit, yeah. That's the AC that I played in. I have 2 different caffeinated beverages in front of me. I'm going to get my mind into an attentive state. Planetside remains and continues to be the biggest how many 5th graders can you beat up simulator on the market. I guess there is that. Can you out headshot a 5th grader? Okay. Well, I have a big agenda for tonight. I don't think we're going to get through all of it, to be honest. But those are the comments. Drop your comments on this video if you think I'm dumb, if you think Lex is dumb, or if you have anything you want to add to anything I say. I love this interaction. Okay. We're talking about MMOs today. I have a bunch of topics that are all loosely MMO related. And I think we're going to start with this lovely video by Josh Strife Hayes. It's called Why You Cannot Kill World of Warcraft, which is a great title for a video. Fantastic. This came out just a few days ago, just yesterday, actually. Fantastic. I love being up with the times. Half the stuff I find I want to react to is actually secretly like 2 years old. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Josh Hayes, and this is MMO Opinion, a bite-sized show where we talk about topics relevant to the MMO gaming landscape, and I give my opinions on them. Each week, we'll look through another question or point of view within the industry and analyze it. These videos are kept short enough to be interesting and long enough to hopefully generate a discussion in the comments. If you have a question or theory about the MMO world you want discussed, then leave it in the comments below or message me on Discord. As usual, a massive thank you to my Patreon supporters and Twitch subs who make my channel possible. Right, let's begin.
This video possible.
This week, why you cannot kill World of Warcraft. Now that's a powerful statement and will instantly divide most of you. You'll either be nodding along and agreeing or screaming about how WoW is overrated and terrible and there are better games out already, and you're kind of both right. But let me put it this way. You cannot kill World of Warcraft because it's not just a game anymore. It's evolved into something much, much stronger and more widespread, and this is precisely what keeps it from dying. Now, I'm not saying you can't make a better game. I'm saying even if you did, you still wouldn't kill it. Now, that sounds odd, so let's investigate. Now, this could easily be an entire essay, but I'm going to trim the fat and only...
Right, like, there's this platform principle. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's the right word for it. But there's this principle that, and you can apply the same logic to like social media sites too. Like if you want to replace Facebook, you can't just make a new Facebook that's 10% better. It's got to be twice as good to actually make people get over the moment of inertia to swap platforms. And so anything that truly replaced, that truly one up to World of Warcraft would have to not be just 10% better or 30% better. It's got to be twice as good, 5 times as good. That's what it takes to get people to move on.
Put forward what I believe is the strongest, most condensed argument for the immortality of World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft wasn't the first MMO, actually far from it. It has predecessors such as Asheron's Call, EverQuest, or Ultima Online. They were out for years before, but even they were inspired by even older games like Tibia, the original online Neverwinter, or the island of Kesmai. The MMO genre had existed and been pretty popular before World of Warcraft came along, but World of Warcraft had something those other games didn't.
What's he about to say? I paused a little too slow. Starts with an M. I'm guessing it's either going to be money or marketing.
Mass market appeal. Now, EverQuest was popular, Ultima Online was popular, but World of Warcraft was an absolute phenomenon. Quite simply, more people played it. The graphic requirements were low, so minimum spec machines could run it. The gameplay was much more simple than the stat-heavy MMOs of the time, so it appealed to people wanting a more streamlined approach to gameplay. And they had an absolutely massive marketing budget, which, combined with the fact they were springboarding off the success of the Warcraft real-time strategy franchise, made for a perfect storm of a game that was easy to find, easy to run, and easy to play. And it was being pushed left, right, and center. World of Warcraft...
It's something that a lot of people forget about WoW, where it's kind of seen as like the normie MMO these days. Or maybe looking back at classic, like the brutal MMO. But it was made to be a more friendly, more accessible experience from the very beginning in terms of its design. A lot of people who worked on it were people who rated in EverQuest. And they wanted the game to play in that was easier to approach for people. I feel like those pre-WoW days are like kind of getting lost into like the recesses of history. I think we need like a modern documentary maker to come out and make like a documentary about EverQuest and what MMO gaming was like before WoW. So I feel like post WoW, like it's just a totally different story that's been told so many times.
Warcraft swept onto the MMO scene like an absolute tidal wave. And not only did it round up all of the non-MMO players and introduce them to MMOs, it stole vast amounts of players from the already established game.
I was a non-MMO player before. Wow. My buddy Kelly, who I played competitive Half-Life mods with, Team Fortress Classic. I never really played a Blizzard game either. He's like, dude, you gotta try this WoW beta. It looks really cool. You gotta try it. Everyone's doing it. And I was like, okay. I signed up for a beta. I got in early, but I was just like, I don't need it. I got other games. It's just a beta. Who cares? I got bored and I jumped into like the last week of the WoW beta, and I was totally captured. It totally got me. Lex played Warcraft 3 and all their other RTS games. You played solely for the continuation of the universe. Yeah. So they had a big IP, a big successful IP already that they were able to hook into. That was super smart. So like the game was based on an existing IP people knew, and it was a refinement of something that was already working for niche markets. You combine that with a bunch of marketing and like what is Blizzard polish, which I think you can make fun of, but you know, back especially in those days, it was quite a thing. Checked all the boxes, huge rich environment and lore to go off of. Yeah. And interesting too is like when the game came out, it had this the subscription model, the $15 a month, which was unique. And it's so, I think it's so kind of cool to look back and realize that that model wasn't actually like a new moment in gaming. That's just a World of Warcraft thing. Only World of Warcraft has a model like that, I think. At least at the scale that World of Warcraft is at. Let's continue.
Its success was immense. You can't deny the success of the game even if you hate it. It is still used as the player base yardstick other games are measured against.
True.
When a new game releases or gets an expansion, the question of does it compare to WoW during Wrath of the Lich King always comes up. And the answer is always no. No, it doesn't. So love it or hate it, the simple fact remains that World of Warcraft made a massive impact on the MMO landscape for better or worse, and now every single game designer wanted a slice of that pie. They wanted to either match or, due to having lofty aspirations, exceed World of Warcraft's success. They wanted to make the game that they would describe, and the description has now become a cliché phrase, the WoW killer. Over the years, World of Warcraft grew, putting out expansion packs, TV adverts with popular celebrities, board games, books, posters, and slowly gathered a cosplay community and eventually an entire convention. And it's this exact expansion, away from the virtual and into the real, that has guaranteed its place in the gaming landscape forever. To explain this to both World of Warcraft lovers and haters and to remove nostalgia and prejudice, let's examine a similar situation with something neutral. Let's look at two unlikely things that actually experience the same cultural impact. Football and Pokemon. Now,
I wonder where he's going with this. Like I said, I was too young to have credit cards and stuff, so I just used cash at the electronics boutique and bought the 30-day prepaid game time cards. Amen. I think that's what I did too. There was actually a point in Burning Crusade where I found a an in-game patron in my guild who I would send like I couldn't remember what it was. I would send gold to every month, and then in exchange he would slide me a code for a month of game time on the DL. And so early on, I was playing WoW with game tokens, basically.
Now, you don't need to like football or Pokemon for this analogy to work. Personally, I'm indifferent to football, and while I like the Pokemon franchise, I'm not a hardcore fan, so this works quite well. Imagine someone saying they were going to make a better sport than football, and thus become more popular than football. Now, this is the fallacy. The idea that if a sport is better, it would instantly become more popular, because those two are separate things. Just because something is better, objectively or subjectively, does not mean it will instantly, or over time, become more popular. Because Football is not just the 90 minutes on the pitch being played. It's so much more. It's the merchandising, it's the advertising, it's the temple-like stadiums built to it. It's the queues of people waiting to get in. It's the cult. It's the tribal warfare that's simulated between rival teams.
Right.
The analysis
Right.
of the after-game tactics, the posters,
It's all the
team
culture that's resulted from
allegiances,
the game.
rivalries between famous teams,
And the more
you drink with
history
your
that
mates in a
culture
pub
has,
after discussing the game, the kickabout in the
harder it is to
park.
displace.
It's a personality to some. Some people make the game their entire existence. Now consider, even if a sport did come along that was objectively more fun to play, more fun to watch, easier to get into, and yet more complex to master, even if that sport was created, it would not have the immediate tribal loyalty that football already has. It wouldn't have the temples to playing, the advertising power of FIFA, the established governing bodies. The new sport being a better sport is actually only a very small part of the success puzzle. This is also apparent in the advertising for FIFA games. The advert literally says, with football, you are never alone. They're not pushing the sport or the game. They're enticing you with the community. For a more geek-appropriate example, and one that I would be able to empathise with more, consider Pokemon. While it started as a card game and an anime, it is now the highest-earning franchise in the world. It's got movies, it's got multiple TV shows,
Blows
and
my mind.
endless merchandise. It is McDonald's toys. Pokemon...
Hot take, I never got into Pokemon. I think maybe I'm slightly too old to have been at the right age when it was popular on Game Boy and all that stuff. I was born in 83. Does that sound right? Competitive Pokemon days. Nah, bro. Why are you saying nah? I just bounced off of it. I also think that the main hook of Gotta Catch 'Em All never really appealed to me. You didn't do anything competitive with it till you were like 23. Not too old. Competitive Pokemon at 23? Yeah, and a lot of times I go back to, like, looking at Pokemon, I go back to, like, Bartle typing, which is the idea that you can break down the motivations of most players who engage with social RPG type games into socializer, achiever, explorer, killer. And Pokemon definitely, the idea of gotta catch 'em all is a straight up achiever mission. Like, you have to complete all the tasks. That is a player acting their will on the world, getting those checkboxes. And like, achiever is like one of the least motivating parts of my Bartle type. Competitive is more about breeding and breeding for hidden stat values. That's a world I know nothing about. And it sounds a little creepy, Lex, but maybe I'll have to do some continued reading on that subject. Let's see what this fine Jen has to say.
May have started life as a card game, but it is now so much more. So when someone says, I'm going to make a better card game than Pokemon, they might actually be able to do that. But it won't matter, because being a good card game is no longer what keeps Pokemon alive.
I forgot about that.
It is now a self-sustaining entity. It's relevant simply for being popular, and popular simply for being relevant. It's a cycle that continues itself. It has pushed past what it began as and transcended. It is more. It is a phenomenon unto itself. And you will not beat this simply by making a better card game. An example would be, objectively, Magic the Gathering is a more complex card game than Pokemon, and yet it hasn't reached anywhere near the mass appeal of the little yellow mouse. To bring it back to gaming, this is the situation we are in with World of Warcraft. It may have begun life as an online game, Horde versus Alliance, and if that was all it still is, then dethroning it would be a simple task. All you'd need to do is make an objectively better game and players would have no reason not to switch, but that isn't the case. Long-time World of Warcraft players aren't just playing because it's a good game. They're playing because it's a community. It's a familiar, nostalgic place to exist. It's a childhood memory that's sustained itself into adulthood. It is a lifestyle to them, with clans and Twitch streamers and YouTube personalities covering it. Playing Warcraft means you are part of something much much larger than just a game. It means you're part of a subculture. And just as with football, with Warcraft, you are never alone. World of Warcraft has evolved beyond what it began as. It's affected popular culture so strongly.
Yeah. So I came back for Classic last year when it was released, and a lot of people I knew also played Classic. The nature of Classic is that just because you and all your friends come back to it doesn't mean you can play together, because it had the old school approach to realms. But I also came back for Shadowlands when it released. So I guess Classic was 2019, so not technically last year. But last year, actually, Shadowlands technically released, and that I also came back for. And there are so many people I know who I never knew played WoW who play WoW. It is also a game that has touched a lot of people, and like I've just been kind of at this point. I've gotten to a point with WoW, with Shadowlands, where I'm not like logging in every day to play the game for the game. I'm just kind of playing to like to be with people, spend time with people, and enjoy the social experience. I'm actually trying to decide how I want to engage with it further at this point. It's kind of interesting, but I too have how dare me. Lex, you still do not approve of my enjoyment of retail, I can tell. I actually want to do a Deeg Shadowlands like kind of review impressions type content drop at some point. I'm not sure how I want to do that, but it's on my mind to do. I think the Shadowlands does. That was sarcastic. I see Shadowlands from the perspective of someone who hasn't played the retail WoW in a decade. So a little different than most people do. And the game's changed a lot over those 10 years. And I have a lot of things I can say, but I think I'm gonna save those things up for a specific moment in time in the near future. In any case, yeah. This guy's message is very simple, very easy to understand, and it's a great place to start this night of MMO talk. You cannot merely improve upon WoW to replace it. And lots of games have proved that point. Because there are games that have come out that do so many things better or more interesting or different than WoW. And yeah, I mean, I think they all have their fatal flaws in some ways, but and the other thing that Blizzard does is they're always going back to the drawing board, and they're always trying new stuff out. I've been surprised reading back over the past few expansions to see how many kind of crazy seeming things that they've done. It seems like Battle for Azeroth, they tried a lot of crazy things that just sound awful and were actually awful. But now, like, a lot of those awful things from BFA are just not in Shadowlands. Like, Blizzard has the courage to be like, this expansion, this 2-year period of our game is going to look completely different than the last 2-year period of our game. And they're trying this big new thing called Covenants, which is like a fucking stubborn boot in the sand saying, our game is an RPG. We didn't forget. We've played a lot of shit MMOs trying to scratch that WoW itch. Nothing ever stuck. Yes, and that's what tonight's about. Actually, there are a couple of articles that I have on my list. I'm tired of waiting for the next big MMO. We're going to get there soon. And massively overthinking. Do MMO players secretly just want another WoW? Let's continue this.
It's merged into it. It made the incredible leap that very few works of media can do. It inserted itself into the cultural zeitgeist, and it remained. There are very few books, games, films, stories, or people that can become so well known within a smaller subculture that they bleed into and infest popular culture. Very few things ever make the leap from known by a small few to known by everyone. World of Warcraft has followed the same relevancy journey as football, Star Wars, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, The Beatles, Bruce Lee, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Monopoly, McDonald's, YouTube, Tesla, Warhammer, or any other figure or creation that began as something relatively well known within a small subculture and then became so stunningly popular it managed to entrench itself in general culture. Ultimately, you will not kill World of Warcraft because even though it started life as a video game, it has grown and morphed into so much more. People have brought the Horde and the Alliance conflict into real life, and the world of Azeroth is now, historically, more fleshed out than some actual real-life ancient civilizations. It's no longer just an MMO game, and therefore another MMO game will not
Actual
kill
real-life
it. World of Warcraft
civilizations.
is a personality, a characteristic, a cult, a milestone of modern gaming. It is a grandfathered in industry standard. It's a cookbook, a branded mouse mat, a convention, a cosplayer, an action figure, a Hollywood blockbuster, a novel,
Cosplay
an
stuff.
audio novel, a comic, a curiosity, an
I admire
addiction,
it, but
a
man, it
board
bounces
game,
off
a
me hard.
collectible card game. It's a fashion, a tattoo, a South Park episode, a celebrity endorsement. It is an
His
entire
hammer's wobbling.
culture, and you do not kill a culture by making a good video game. Developers see the success of World of Warcraft, then they see that World of Warcraft is a game, and they think that the success can therefore be reproduced simply by making another game. But that's absolutely not the case. They think they can kill WoW by making a better game than WoW, and this thinking is flawed, because even if they do make a better game, the game they make is extremely unlikely to spawn a more successful culture,
300
and so it will
DPS, right?
always ultimately fall short of killing WoW. Think of the games that came the closest. Final Fantasy XIV is using the might of the Final Fantasy franchise and the funding of Square Enix. It already had a culture behind it. It had cosplayers, cookbooks, even a real-life Eorzea cafe in Japan, and it still hasn't done it. Then the Elder Scrolls Online, with the popular success of Skyrim leading many offline single players to the online Elder Scrolls Online. And it has a pre-established fan base, and it's a good MMO, and it still didn't dethrone the king. Even Lord of the Rings Online, a game based on one of the most successful fantasy franchises in history, still wasn't enough to shift the cultural significance of World of Warcraft. Ironically, the most damaging MMO...
Okay. This is actually reinforces something you just said, Fane Raven, which is the only thing that can kill WoW is Blizzard. They're great at killing their own games. Where's the Pokemon MMO, man? Yeah. Do you not have phones? And Blizzard is trying to grow past the success of these franchises to make them into these big global things. Like we know they're making mobile titles for everything they have, right? And how much more unlikely will it be to dethrone WoW when you aren't just trying to dethrone WoW the MMO, trying to dethrone WoW the MMO, which the same subscription pays for classic WoW, classic Burning Crusade, some fucking mobile game that I'm sure people will like. What else can they do to flesh out this WoW franchise? Like, I almost feel like we've gone through a period, all of us, Ulex, Ufane, and me, and a lot of people watching this who are in our same age bracket, where like we've lived through this time where IPs have gone global with the global communication we now all have, and with the proliferation of these communication mediums. And it makes me wonder, man, like, are we ever going to see new IPs ever again? It kind of is discouraging, actually. Like, are we ever are our like grandkids going to be playing World of Warcraft? Fuck. I I hate to say it, but I kind of hope not. If you give me a mobile game that rewards me with world buffs on my in-game character, I'd 100% play a shitty mobile Blizzard game. There it is. That's the sauce. It's all about that engagement. It's the same thing with movies. Do we even want to? What do you mean, do we even want to, Fane?
MMORPG to release was World of Warcraft Classic, because the best way to damage a cult is to split that cult into smaller sections and invite civil war. Killing WoW is no longer a case of simply making a better MMO, because WoW isn't just an MMO.
Do we even want new IPs? I honestly don't even care. Yeah, Fane, exactly. And then I think that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Maybe people get IP fatigue. Like, I wonder if people like. I have a bunch of friends who will always talk about the newest Marvel movies, and I don't get it. But by the same token, I'm one of those guys who will always talk about the newest Star Wars shit because I'm like a Star Wars. Like Star Wars hooked me early. It got me. Got to do the sure thing, right? And I'm hoping that our technology will get to a point where. Sorry, I need to think about this for a second. I despair for the IP homogenization that we're really beginning to see and that we're going to continue to see. And as the pressure for games and movies and TV to get bigger and bigger, have all these interrelated properties with all these infrastructures and huge back things continues to grow, I just worry that like we're just gonna see retreads. Like I thought it was really interesting when CDPR made the choice to not just keep making Witcher shit, which they totally could have done. People would have been okay with The Witcher 4. Even if they like made it like not Geralt, right? They could have stayed in that IP, kept making those games. People would have swallowed it without a fucking beat. But so they're like, no, we're gonna do this new world. We're gonna do Cyberpunk, and you know that's a different discussion altogether that we've had. But it's risky taking on new IPs. And it seems like the people who are able to take risks are, as time goes on, less and less companies that can make games like MMOs, and there are more companies that can make like indie companies. Those are the companies that seem like they're taking more risks, and maybe that's as it should be. I've heard that that's what it's like in the film industry too. You know, Blizzard's working on new IPs right now, says Fane. That's all you can say without putting your friend in trouble. Yeah, Fane with the insider. Yes, we know this. Yeah, I mean, like they had Project Titan going, right? Which eventually died and turned into Overwatch. That was a new IP. I mean, we can, I think, be assured that most companies like Blizzard always have new IPs that they're workshopping, because if they can find an IP that hooks with a game that actually is successful, like that's where the money printing starts. And I think that the World of Warcraft IP is held back by the game, probably in some ways, because I think that World of Warcraft has a ceiling in terms of total possible growth. I think the game's been bouncing off that ceiling for a few years. And because they set it up from the start as a subscription model game, people are intolerant of making purchases in addition to that, which I get. I feel that way too about it. You should be intolerant of it, but it's a way. It's a model where the money you make only grows if you bring in more eyeballs. And I think that probably World of Warcraft is, and the market for MMO games like it is a bit capped. It's my impression, my layman's point of view. For the last 5 years, microbrews have outsold Budweiser. Doesn't change that we know Bud. Yep, and we'll always know Bud. Our grandkids will know Bud. Anyway, let's finish this video out.
No. It's a part of gaming history. The players have time invested. The marketing has legendary adverts. Chuck Norris, Mr. T. Guilds, clans and player groups have been formed for years and are held together now not necessarily by love of the game itself, but by love of the community, and they will always remain so. The impact of World of Warcraft will never be less relevant. The long-time players will never be less invested, and the new generation of gamers will never be less curious about trying it. And that is why you cannot kill World of Warcraft, because it's no longer just a game. It's a part of our very culture. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me in this episode of MMO Opinion. If you agree, feel free to leave
That's a
comment below. I
great
would love to
video.
discuss this
Simple
with you. If you
idea,
liked the
well
video, then
stated.
drop a like or sub to the channel for more MMO stuff. Ring the bell so you don't
Shout
miss
out
a single future
to
video. A massive thank you to my
who
Patreon
made this
supporters
again?
and Twitch subs. You can support
Josh Strifehaze. At one point, you can't imagine that the beer market would be outsaturated by microbrews. The gaming market might go the same way at that one point. I don't know how making beer works for microbrews, but if microbrews are outselling Bud, that suggests to me that the economics of scale are accessible to smaller time investments, and that Bud can't just beat everyone by the fact that they have unique ability to produce at scale that microbrewers can't. I'm not sure if that's true, but I think when it comes to game production, there's that problem, right? I mean, Bud is Bud. It, if you like it, it's fine. If you don't, it tastes like shit. I've never been a fan of it. Not that I'm much of a beer drinker these days, but making games is fucking hard and fucking expensive. And that reality and putting tons and tons of time, money, and energy into a creative project that even if it successfully releases might not make money. The risk aversion is real. The risk aversion is real. Yeah, I don't know if I have a point to come to on this, but I think that video made a very good point that is worth. It's like one of the foundational bricks of any discussion about MMOs that we should have. So yeah, what's next? Okay, I'm actually going to skip past this Rasputin video. I think I'll save it for another time. I think what we're going to roll into is truck stop donkey hole, which is a crass metaphor by a man who's not above making crass metaphors. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Kevin Jordan. Kevin Jordan, who was one of the original designers on World of Warcraft. He built the original talent trees. And he stopped working on World of Warcraft around Cataclysm. And at some point in the last couple of years, he popped up and started appearing on Twitch and doing commentary. This is a video that is actually where he's commentating over a discussion about Tarkov between Pestily and someone else who I don't know, Veritas. But I think that the comments that he makes are relevant to MMOs as a whole, not just Tarkov. Let's see if I'm right.
Hello and welcome to Failure and Analysis. My name is Kevin Jordan, and today we're here to talk about truck stop donkey hole. It's a phrase I use on my channel from time to time, and it actually relates to game design and what I see as some of the failings of more recent game design in several games. This is a video of Pestily talking to Veritas. And they're talking about Escape from Tarkov. And what it ended up being for me is a great example of the concept I'm talking about, which I'll define in a minute. But it has to do with players recommending game design changes. And
Had to pause. This I've been searching for some good opinions about the phenomenon of gamers giving feedback to developers. The only person I see out there talking about this is Kevin Jordan. He has said a few times in the past a few things. Um, and how to summarize it? The perspective from him that I've gleaned from watching Kevin Jordan's content, and Kevin, if you want to come on my show and talk to me about it, you're invited, 100%. Is the principle of gamers know what's wrong, but they don't know how to fix it. Designers are paid; they're professionals who know how to fix games. So developers have to listen to gamers, but not follow their instructions. That's the balance. It's kind of like and this is it's kind of like a parent knowing what's best for a child. And that's because a parent knows much more context that the child about what the child is operating in than the child does. The gamer never has the whole picture of the way the game is made, what its limitations are, what content is planned for the future, and how to work in suggestions with that in the way a developer does. This is good stuff.
It can be a very dangerous thing if it doesn't go through the filter of a game designer. So, and a good game designer will make good choices after the feedback, and because he'll be able to mold the feedback into something usable. Bad game designers will kind of just take the feedback as is and put it right into the game in an attempt to appease the person that that's been giving the feedback, the player base, so to speak. But that can lead to a very down a very dangerous path. So welcome along, and hope you enjoy the little chat about.
Interestingly enough, sometimes appeasement is what is called for. It's like any relationship. If you fucked up and you've caused pain to the other party in a relationship, even if what they're asking for is not exactly what would be best, sometimes as a gesture, it can be better long term to do what is asked versus what is best. It's hard to know where that line is. I admit I'm not an expert on it. And well, yeah, I mean, we're assuming in this discussion, Lex, and I'm not like applying this to any specific developer. Although we love talking about Planetside and Rogue Planet. What I'm doing is I'm assuming that all parties in this are basically competent. You have a competent gamer giving feedback, a competent developer receiving feedback and trying to act on it. How do these parties interact in a way that best serves everyone? And I was going to mention that there is one really outlier example of a game that uses a very gamer-driven decision-making model for changes, and it's old school RuneScape, right? OSRS. Where my understanding of it from watching developer interviews is that they basically have the community vote on what goes into the game. Now, I think the developers choose what the parameters are for the votes. So you can just write them whatever you want. But I was astonished when I watched, I think it was an interview between Asmongold, Rich Campbell, and a handful of the RuneScape developers. And it just sounds like they just do what the community wants, basically. Which to me seems, and I'm assuming to Kevin would seem kind of crazy. But it could be that that is like a, not an act, but it could be that is like a presentation. Maybe they still do what is best for the game, and they confine their choices to what those things are, and just let the community kind of put the cherry on top by voting what goes in first. I don't know. I don't have an insider perspective on that game. Maybe if you do, you can let me know. But without further ado, it's KJ.
about Truck Stop Donkey Hole. So what is Truck Stop Donkey Hole? So I first defined this in my channel a while back, and I compared it to something that very few of us have any knowledge of, but sort of the art of seduction, romance, and for those of you that have had this experience, when you first meet a woman that you're interested in, there's like a slow, steady progression towards intimacy. And that buildup is really exciting. That buildup is really satisfying. The first time you make that person smile, the first time you end up a light touch on the arm you get from her, you make her laugh for the first time. These things are sort of amazing stepping stones towards ultimately, where you want to be. But they're all an incredible and an important part of the process. And eventually you get to those intimate moments, and that's the culmination of all of those previous moments, and it makes the entire experience really more gratifying and more engaging and more compelling than it otherwise would have been. So the alternative to that is you go down to the local truck stop, and there's a little hole cut in the bathroom where you put your junk, and something happens on the other side, and you take care of business and you leave, right?
Right, guys. Yeah, what Kevin's talking about is a phenomenon that I've heard Dr. Aldo Kanogia talk about, which is that, or was it him? Was it Dr. K? Perhaps I'm misremembering this. But it's a phenomenon of the fact that what we actually feel satisfaction in, generally speaking, is not achieving a goal. It's making meaningful progress towards a goal. And actually achieving a goal can be a really risky moment. It can be a moment of uncertainty. But making meaningful progress towards a goal you care about is something that always feels good. And when you're in that stage of a relationship where you're getting to know somebody and you're really attracted to them and you're trying to woo them, and the relationship progresses, that's what that is. If you just go get your needs taken care of, then you're essentially skipping to the end, and you're not actually making progress towards something you care about. You're just getting it, and that doesn't feel good. I wonder how this is going to be related back to game design. Truck Stop Donkey Hole.
And you don't know what's on the other side. It could be a dude, it could be a woman, it could be a donkey, right? So that's why we call it Truck Stop Donkey Hole, right? So, and unfortunately, this, without realizing it, this is what players are frequently asking for when it comes to game design. They're trying to take the first story, the first process, which is slow and engaging and meaningful and building up to something really super amazing, and reduce it down to its component parts, which is putting my dick in a hole, and that's it. That's the experience. I'm done, and I can get back to whatever it is I was doing. But they've taken all of the joy out of it. They've taken all of the process out of it. And that stuff is really important. So in a well-rounded, engaging game designed experience, you have all of those other things. And players sometimes want to just bypass all that and go straight to the end product, right?
Just give me the loot. I just want the loot. I don't want to read the quest. I don't want to do the escort. I don't want to find a group. I don't want to find a guild. I don't want to learn boss strats. I don't want to keybind. All I want to do is get the loot. I think there are a lot of very modernized games that are very modern game designs that are helping people get to this goal faster. GDKP. Yeah. GDKP is a classic thing, WoW classic thing, where you go to a raid, and instead of paying DKP, Dragon Kill points, which is a guild currency earned for participation, you just buy stuff, you bid. And at the end of the raid, all the money used to buy gear is doled out to people who help kill the bosses. Which there's a whole like side phenomenon there that's worth exploring, where classic WoW has like an economy that's run by bots that farm materials, and then price those materials out of the range of players so that they have to go do GTKP runs to earn gold so they can buy their buffs to raid. Highly legal gold, exactly. Highly legal gold. I'm sure the guy who paid 1 million gold for that sword out of Naxxramas definitely earned all that gold by farming arcane crystals. Is that what it is for Crusader enchant? No, 200k, not 1 million. Dire Maul East, right. Yeah, I'm sure it's 100% Dire Maul East. I'm sure. 100%. And players rightfully want to find a way to get to the end point faster, because that shows mastery. And people really value mastery in video games, as you should. Having an experience where there's no mastery involved is just like watching a movie. And people don't watch movies by skipping to the end. I mean, I guess unless you're a barbarian. They watch it because there's an experience and they go through the build-up. And some people just want to say, fuck it, give me a movie with explosions. That's all I want. Explosions, some tits, I'm good. Some people want a story, something that connects, and something that they connect with. I guess it's the same way in video games. Can't buy parses, bro. True. So Kevin is a bit of a romantic, I think, when it comes to game design. He's a bit of an old school. It's just cool to have his voice be part of the conversation. I'm interested to hear how he's going to react to these young gentlemen, Veritas and Pestily.
But they're depriving themselves, and as creators, you're allowing yourself to
You're depriving yourself, young man.
Players of truly amazing experiences by eliminating all of that extra stuff. So, and this relates to game design in a lot of different places, but this video I'm about to show talks about something related to this in no uncertain terms, in my opinion. And so it was a great example of kind of what I'm talking about. Before I start the video, I want to say Pestily is an absolute god. He's a legend.
Yeah.
For any of you guys excited or looking forward to drama that I'm trying to create between him and...
You need a relationship with God, brother. First of all, that's where you start. But Kevin is saying is right. Pestily is fascinating and fantastic guy. He, if you're interested in him and in mental health related content, Dr. K, Healthy Gamer GG, did a fantastic interview with Pestily, talking about his life and how he's become this incredible, massively successful Tarkov streamer.
And me or Veritas, that's not what this is about. I've actually submitted the adoption papers to Pestily. All he has to do is sign them, and I can start legitimately calling him dad. I love Pestily. He's awesome. I don't know Veritas very well, but I know he's an amazing first-person shooter gamer. And, you know, his play speaks for itself. And one of the things that makes high-end, professional, extremely successful gamers what they are is that sort of narrow-mindedness and that single-minded determination to be and to have one type of experience, right? And they very frequently make poor game designers because when it comes to thinking about the product or the game or the whatever it is you're building, they forget that there's a ton of other people that aren't having the experience they have and don't have the goals and the ambitions that they have. And so all the things that make them great at what they do actually translate to making them poor at game design. Now, obviously, this.
Let's think about this. So people who are high-performing internet athletes may not make good game designers because of that ability to have narrow-minded focus. And that narrow-minded focus makes them too unaware of the experience of people who aren't like them. And I think that one way to interpret the way that WoW retail has changed over the years is to apply that judgment to some of the WoW developers. And I wonder if that's where KJ's coming at it from. A little bit. Just a supposition, but I have to think about if I agree with that sentiment. I'm not sure if being a high-performance internet athlete, and I'm saying that term with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, even though that kind of is what it is, it promotes or in some ways correlates to narrow-minded focus. I suppose it does, and to some extent. I'm gonna let Kevin convince me. I'm thinking about it as we go.
This is a generalization, but I found it to be pretty true very frequently in my experiences. And so it takes a very rare person to be able to take that competitive player hat off and put on a game designer hat and make it work. So this is not.
That's one of the things I really watch for when I listen to creators talk about video games a lot. I've noticed this, that there are some creators who. A lot of creators sit in like a comfort zone where they play the game and they have a feeling about it, and they talk about their feeling about the game, which is very like straightforward thing to do. Like me, I. There's some creators who are more community focused, and they kind of have a part of the community that they end up championing. Like for example, I think Planetside is very polarized in that way, where you have a lot of people who really champion like the high effort, high stats, and high skill way of playing the game. And then you have, interestingly, like there are creators out there who really champion the people who don't play that way. And there's this weird back and forth in that community. But Kevin is saying that people who can play a game, have a qualified opinion about a game from their perspective, but still see things from others' perspective being rare, I think is true. One of the things I compare it to is like, let's say that you're making an argument, and let's say you know that there's a counter argument to what you have to say. And let's say one way you're going to make your argument by responding to a counter argument. Now, my competitors will say blah, 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 but I say this. Now, the way of doing that, that's like, I think, very tempting, is to put up a ridiculous version of the argument against you or against whatever you're going to argue for to make your argument seem more reasonable by comparison. You see it all the time in news, like news media, where they give a fair and balanced perspective, where they bring in like a really well-spoken person to talk about one point of view, and they bring in like a half-mad crazy person on the other side on the point of view that particular news outlet wants to diminish. So yes, they like give equal airtime to both, but they don't give equal consideration and quality to both arguments. So one of the things that ends up being very important is whenever you're if you're really trying to pursue the truth and you have an opinion that you're pursuing, is to consider the highest quality version of the opposing viewpoint. Because if you do that, you're going to end up with a higher quality version of your own viewpoint. It raises the tide for everyone. And I wonder if, like, what he's talking about with having an open perspective, being able to see all points, all ways to play the game, is somehow related there.
Not about drama or how I feel about these two gentlemen. They're just sharing their opinions. But a good game designer will be able to translate what they're talking about into usable things to make the game better, and not just cut and paste what they're saying and put it into the game. So here we go. Let's take a listen.
And I think that they're right, but for the wrong reasons. Like, what they love about the game is not that it's realistic.
It's that it's immersive.
It's immersive.
And I've been actually preaching this for like over a year now.
If you just joined this, they're talking about Escape from Tarkov. Kevin's not going to make... I mean, Kevin does play Escape from Tarkov, but I think that this is a more general concept we're applying. Just FYI to those who just joined.
Where I've said, Tarkov's not realistic at all. It's immersive. There are realistic aspects of the game, like the environmental detail, or like the way the gun looks and acts, and the the cocking of it. There are lots and lots of realistic aspects of the game, but the reason why people get so enthralled with this game is the best way I can word it is, somebody in my chat said earlier today, it was only like an hour ago, how he actually has to hype himself up to get into a raid, because it's like a horror movie to him. He'll go into a raid and he's like, he's afraid that someone's just going to blast him in the head from next to him, and he missed it, and he's just going to shit himself, And there's like, and I honestly, I miss a lot of those feelings because I'm a bit desensitized to a lot of that now. But Tarkov has this way of just making you lose yourself inside the game. And it's where sometimes you can play Tarkov and you can play the game for like hours straight and it feels like minutes.
I'm so glad that Pestily pointed this out, because this will be really relevant later. Like, so I think they're going to start this video and they're going to touch on the magic, right, of Tarkov, right? And this is relevant because they're going to describe the magic and why it's so amazing. And then later on in the video, not very far soon after, I feel like they're going to forget what they were just saying and start talking about things that are going to chip away at the magic, right? And I talk about this a lot in relation to retail WoW, or WoW in general, how relevant it is, because there's a magic to the combination of these elements that is lost on a lot of players. They can't put their finger exactly on it. Sometimes they can, but then they so easily forget in order to chase the specific changes that they want, and not realize that the changes they want actually damage the very combination, the very recipe that makes the game so amazing. So I'm really glad they started with this, and also I'm really happy that Pestily mentioned the kind of person that is much more average person, because Tarkov is a very scary game. Many describe it as a horror game, and you see these streamers playing at a high level, nothing phases them, they just blow through everything. And some people do play at that level, but I think a lot of people are on the edge quite frequently. And so it's really important to remember, not just as a game designer, not just the people playing at the level these guys are playing at, but the average level sort of thing. And so changes to accommodate these guys that are desensitized, like he described, or playing at a very specific level, can very easily toss out, average Joe when it comes to enjoying, the game itself. So let's continue listening, though.
I wanted to let Kevin finish. I want to think for a second about magic. What is magic? Magic is something that you know when you see it, but you don't know how it gets produced, right? Magic in games is an experience that comes together in a way that doesn't make sense, but just works. And what it hints at is a lack of sophistication on the observer's part. There's the notion that any technology any technology sufficiently advanced from a person's point of view is indistinguishable from magic. You bring back an iPhone into the Middle Ages, it's a magic rock. Not that it'll do much because it won't have any connectivity. But what Kevin is saying is suggesting is that these folks are going to hold up the magic, which is this formula that they don't sufficiently understand in a way they can verbally break it down, as this great thing that they become desensitized to. And Kevin is suggesting they're going to suggest sacrificing that magic in order to get something. So let's listen. Magic is one of those very loaded terms that I feel like almost means something different to everyone. So I like to call that out as something we should be thinking about consciously as we listen to this.
You are healing yourself, and as soon as you heal, you hear the guy starting to run, and you're like, drop it, and that's why, like, when I made a lot of the video focuses on the idea of abstraction and being like this middle layer between the player and like the soldier in the raid series, right? Like, you want to feel like that guy who's not scared, who's badass, who's fucking trained, he knows what he's doing. And when the game refuses to let you do what you want, instantly that immersion is broken.
When the game refuses me to let me do what I want, the immersion is broken. Wow. That's going to need some explanation. Let's see what Kevin's going to say.
So this is an example of what I'm talking about. He wants to be able to ditch healing, stop heal immediately, right? But the decision to heal or not is a compelling one, and it's an important one because there's a chance that you do it at the wrong time, right? So very little to do with realism, and he's frustrated because he's been killed while bandaging or whatever because he can't drop it fast enough, as we all have been. But those are good moments because those make him think about when is the right time to heal. So that's a cool gameplay element, because if there were no cost to starting a heal, people would be constantly starting heals willy-nilly in the middle of fights, and it also damages the value of stims, which are quick to use during combat. So there's more going on in the gameplay there than he understands. He's just frustrated by the fact that he has to make this tough decision, which is an important one for the experience.
Facade of like this seamless connection between you and the game just breaks down completely, and now you're fighting against the game where it's like, I want to do something and the game won't let me.
He just wants to fuck.
I'm gonna die
Truck
because
stop donkey hole.
like reloading when you're standing up while you're reloading, or canceling a heal, or putting the mag back in after you check it. Like, so many things just, and then you get frustrated, and then obviously, Twitch chat is Twitch chat, and they'll say, oh, well, dude, what do you expect? Like, you need to play around these shitty, annoying things. It's your fault. And it's like, to some extent, yeah, that's true, right? Like, if I went to heal, I guess I should know that
there's a chance it'll bug out.
But it takes
5
seconds, or that it'll bug out or whatever. But if it happens, I still don't feel great about it, right? It's
Yeah. And he's making the argument, Veritas, is that it's bad if he doesn't feel great. But is the win in a video game worthwhile if you can't lose? Is the win in a moment worthwhile if you can't have if all interactions with healing or whatever else are frictionless, then there's no skill to applying to actually engaging with that system. Like, I don't know. I think that I get what Kevin's trying to highlight here. something I've seen in a lot of high-level gaming communities, where a lot of times people who play games at a very high level have latched onto what is to them a very compelling interaction in the game that has a high skill ceiling that they can play with their friends. And they'll feel frustrated by all the parts of the game that get in the way of what to them feels like those compelling interactions. Even if those compelling interactions somehow add up to some quality of the game that they get a beneficial experience from. Repairman says 95% of my time with Tarkov was frustration. They made the 5% feel really good. Right. And Tarkov does a great job. I've never played it, but I know that that's the game that it is. Like, I know it's a very, very hardcore game. I think there's a great quote out there from the developer, the main guy, saying that Tarkov isn't supposed to be fun, which is such a great statement. Is it a joke or is it not a joke? And maybe what Veritas is just saying is that, and here's me trying to put the best, highest quality view that I don't agree with into the conversation, which is maybe what Veritas is saying is like that kind of interaction. Because okay, I'm having a lot of different thoughts. Let me try to parse these out in a way that's efficient. I don't know how the healing interaction works exactly. It sounds like it's something that is a choice that is kind of like a sunk cost, and that by the time it locks your character down in like a animation, and you can't make a decision during that while animation is playing to get out quickly, to make a change, to go chase somebody down, whatever it is. And what Veritas is saying is that I should not be limited. I should be able to drop this immediately and go chase the guy or whatever he wants to do. Like, the game should have less friction for him to fight against. Sometimes those frictional elements, not individually, but in aggregate, add up to a way to pace the game. And if you strip away enough of those frictional elements, you end up with, not individually, but in aggregate, a result where the entire game feels different. Something you got to be careful about. You kiss losing control of your character. Yeah.
But you're not supposed to feel great about it, right?
I'm saying the same thing I did.
The joy comes from knowing, like, all the prep in that choice, right? Like the agonizing build up to, do I start a heal or not? That's where the magic is happening, right? And then when you make a bad decision, it costs you, and you make a good decision, you benefit, right? So, and this happens a million times a second in Tarkov. So again, that's where the magic is, and that magic would be lost if, again, you could just back out of bad decisions really easily.
I just want it to be better, and it can be better, you know? So that's what, like, the frustrating thing is like, yeah, this is the shitty thing that I know we signed up for, but that doesn't make it any better when it happens, you know?
And if you are, like, new to either Veritas or his content, this is the third video of or fourth? Fifth. All right, maybe I missed one. I've definitely seen 3 others before this one. And they talk about, like, all the different stages of Tarkov and what makes it so good. And because I remember how Nikita, it was you and me on a podcast with Nikita, I think, for the very first time, and he said Skyblivion Tarkov's not meant to be fun. It was the very first time that we ever spoke to Nikita. And
it took me a year to fucking really grok what.
Because everyone used it as a meme. Like, Tarkov's not meant to be fun. You're meant to fucking hate life. And that video was the best explanation, even though it was quite an extensive explanation.
You guys agree with that?
Way of explaining it is like, you don't go to a horror movie.
Is Tarkov not meant to be fun?
You go to be scared. You know,
Exactly right. And this is what I love about Nikita. Because he knows, that he's setting out to make these decisions agonizing. to make these experiences agonizing and to punish you when you make bad decisions and to reward you when you make a series of good decisions and play well. So, and the game is agonizing, and it's amazing, and it's amazing because of that agony. It's amazing because of the texture, the difference between a good raid and a bad raid. You can have several bad raids in a row, just hate the game, and then have one amazing raid, and it makes up for all of the garbage you just went through, right? And that's the texture, right? That's the range of emotional experiences that this game allows for. And you don't want to chip away out of that at that by pushing all the emotional experiences towards the middle, right? To deliver a consistently mediocre experience, right? That's
Consistently
terrible.
mediocre. Describe any games y'all can
this is what you have to be mindful of as a game designer when players are talking about the stuff they hate. Sometimes the stuff that
Can't fail
is designed that they hate it and is actually creating that emotional range that they can go through a wealth of experiences.
I want to move on to the topic of VoIP, because actually, when you started talking about the whole VoIP thing, and I've been wanting VoIP for so long, and I think it's come more enhanced the more I've played Rust, about some of the random experiences I have because
I
of
love
VoIP.
having,
and I somewhat deliberately had an experience today.
I love VoIP in video
just
games.
because
I think
of
all games should
that
have it.
video, where there was a naked dude. He had like I don't know, a hatchet or a pistol or some shit, and I deliberately tried to make friends with him, which I did, and then I killed everyone in factory and took him around and got him all the loot and stuff and extracted, right? And I was just using the hand signals and the voice lines and all that.
So this recording's pretty much unusable without some serious editing. So I'm going to keep recording, but yeah, this is pretty bad. We'll keep watching though, because he does eventually get to the part where I want to talk about. But yeah, VoIP is, yeah, no. I don't think Pesley has any idea what he's asked for. And he's played Rust, sure, but he played Rust on a streamer server, right? Where everyone's kind of like not at that level. You know, like everyone is streaming, right? I assume that's where he had this experience. Maybe he didn't, but you guys watched, some of you watched my first day in in Rust, and it was amazing. It was amazing because of the VoIP, but it was also horrifying, right? So pretty funny.
You gotta wade through the negative VoIP experiences to get to the good ones, Kevin. Come on, man. Pot see the kettle. Deeg, didn't you know VoIP is a patriarchal tool used to marginalize out groups? Exactly. Yeah. No, I think I get what Kevin is coming at. Like, it's like VoIP is one of those avenues for abuse that can create a very negative experience for new gamers. And it's a question of like, how much do you care about that? I don't know, man. I'm in my fucking late 30s. I have no illusions about the experiences I'm getting into, and I say, fuck it. Open the floodgates. Give me VoIP and everything. I want to give praise and talk shit to people I play video games with. I'm a social gamer. Always have been. Like, I don't care about checking off fucking boxes. Loot's great, but it's not why I play. It's for the people. Give me the people. And the more you cut off gamers from the people they're playing with, the more, number one, the interactions with people you play with feel transactional and boring. And number two, the more they use outside tools to do the same thing anyway, which maybe is a way to solve the problem. Fane says, I'm grooming my kids to not be phased as much by the negative. Interesting. Yeah, Fane, the father of many, I happen to know, who's probably sitting right next to one of his sons playing Fortnite at this second. How do you get them used to the idea of voice abuse, Fane? I'm very curious about that. Here's a good thread for me. I love a good rabbit trail. Let's see what this is. Right back, Kevin. Oh, this is from Ferociously Steph. Man. Are we going to rabbit trail on this? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Ferociously Steph is a divisive figure. I don't have much of an opinion on yet. I haven't done enough research about what's been said, but let's have a look. You verbally abuse them every day, Thane. I guess that's one way to get them used to it. Okay. Sidebar. Ferociously Steph. Voice chat's unfair. Here's why. I think I've read this before, Lex. Logic leads to consequences, leads to what to do, leads to do fact. Okay? What? How long is this? That's not too long. Okay. I have a feeling I'm going to disagree with this. Logic. Voice chat's important. In team games, voice communication is often critical to competitive success. This is because it has the highest data density for exchanging tactical information. Using this communication band well can often mean the difference between winning and losing. Already I'm disagreeing, and this is a nitpick. It's not about the density, it's about the speed. Writing has a very similar level of density, but people are using their fingers to play games. Fane says that's a lie, but I'm super open about the conversations and what things mean and how it's said. Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking back in my TFC playing days, Fane. You remember those days, right? Wondering, like, if I ever had kids, how would I get them used to what I was facing in terms of the language? And for us, like, I feel like we all came into that world when we were already in our late teens, early 20s. Like, we were at an age where, like, we were ready to hear it. But what if you're, like, 8 years old hearing that shit? What if you're 12 years old hearing that shit? It's very different. Many people have voices that they get made fun of or face harassment for. If you sound feminine, or have a speech impediment, or an accent, or a shitty microphone. Essentially, any voice that's an outlier will subject you to varying levels of disproportionate judgment over time in pickup groups. Let's see if we agree with that. Yeah, I suppose that's true. Society judges. Unfortunately, when you give society a shroud of anonymity, it judges over enthusiastically. Sometimes I think that dissolving the anonymity of gamers is the real solution to these problems. Many people substantiate that, please. Here. Spending mental energy. Yeah, it's easy to argue. This again is like setting up. She's what Steph, he or she, I don't know. What Steph is doing is setting up the counter argument to the point they're going to make. And let's see if Steph produces the highest quality counter argument to what they're about to say. Let's see. Deerkin. Korean League requires social ID to get accounts. Maybe there's something to that. Spending mental energy on defending against your abusers is a disadvantage. All right, so she's categorizing this as abuse straight off. Now, we have to be honest that getting feedback is not the same thing as abuse. Like, if you're driving the wrong way on the road, someone's going to yell at you. Is there a way to use voice chat that is wrong? I guess if you're just getting made fun of for like a speech impediment or an accent, then that is probably just wrong. I have this kind of internet tough guy attitude, though, which is kind of probably a very boomerish of me, where my feeling is just kind of like, this is just what it is, get used to it. But honestly, that's probably not a very productive attitude. That's just a knee-jerk that I have, but I don't think it's correct. I'm thinking about it. Let's continue, though. Spending mental energy on defending yourself against your abusers is a disadvantage. Okay. So is not talking. So is muting anyone. That's also unquantifiable. There's also unquantifiable disadvantages. Where there's harassment, there's also people who respect you and your calls less, but won't say so. Quiet bias. I subjectively believe that voice chat and the cultural biases against minority voices it reveals is a large reason why there's a lacking in diversity highest level play in team games, especially when compared to single-player competitive titles. What to do? Raising awareness is helpful in itself. Calling out harassment, don't let it slide. It may not feel like often to you, but each individual is in 100% of their games. Many minority voices can point to the experience that made them decide worth playing wasn't worth it. Agree with that. I respect that. Call out harassment. We should all be so brave. Adding robust ping systems and prefab voice lines are excellent ways to make these games more fair. Yep. If people don't want to communicate verbally, especially in a public lobby scenario, yep. The goal is to increase data density for non-voice options. Apex does this pretty well, right? Fane says, I don't know. I got roasted for my chat interactions growing up. It's just as abusive in chat as VoIP. Yeah. Yeah, Fane, I totally hear what you're saying, man. Do you feel like you agree with part of this? With regard to text communication? Clarification, I think voice chat is unfair to the point that games would be most fair without it. This is a weird take. I do not want to take away voice chat from your favorite game. I wouldn't do it if I had the power to. Implementing it to an already diverse and established game is a more difficult question. What if we all use voice mods? It's a possible solution, but I don't like it very much. Puts responsibility on the harassed to hide or pass as a standard voice. Also, modulation usually makes voices harder to understand, not easier. Isn't this a cultural problem and not a game mechanics issue? Yes and no. You don't fix systematic bias overnight. By better protecting minority gamers from this bias, I believe we'll see more diversity in the highest levels of play, which will help change minds. Everyone hates faces harassment. Get over it. You don't know the experience of other people. It's not equal for everyone. Just mute, read the thread. Thanks for reading. This conversation is extra important to me because so many people deny there's being a problem at all. While for others, the issue is the truth of their existence. Take care. I mean, Steph is right to call out this as being a problem. But the idea that the problem centers on competitive advantage is, I'm not sure, the best way to couch it. Hey, what's up, Neon and Neonites? Welcome, welcome. We are talking about game stuff. Right now, we're trying to find out if voice chat confers an inappropriate advantage to people who don't have accents or speech impediments. What do you guys think? I really feel like, looking at this, that a more interesting way to think about this problem is not about protection, not about protecting people from disadvantages, but about accountability, making people accountable for their behavior. I can see why this person would get roasted for this point of view. Okay. This person has many things wrong with them. Yes, I've heard this. Yeah, I don't know a lot about this person or what their deal is. But boiling it down to a competitive advantage is something I'm not sure is sufficiently round enough. Because what this is essentially boiling all gaming down to is public lobby experiences. Twitch taking its time, huh? And I think that public lobby experiences are one of the worst. I don't know. Like, I tend to be old school in my thinking, and I don't like public lobby gaming. I think it's kind of it dehumanizes people. And when you add that with a layer of accountability and the transactional experiences you have with people, I mean, it just asks for people to push the boundaries of communication and say things they normally wouldn't say. And I don't think games are going to go in the direction of doing less transactional social interaction and matchmaking. But what they could do is add more layers of accountability. I'm open for what that could look like, but I don't think that this. I'm not sure this person is wrong, but I think this is a very narrow argument, and probably too narrow to have much applicability. Okay. So before the sidebar, is Neon leaving? I said hi to Neon. Hold on. Is there a Twitch etiquette here that I'm violating? I don't want to dead raid you, Neon. Is that an appropriate way to call it? You have down talking dear person. Oh. Oh. Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm not actually. And here's the thing that I really try to do. And y'all can check me on. I'm not here to comment on people and say this person's right, this person's wrong, this person's good, this person's bad, this person is whatever. I'm here to talk about ideas. And I think that okay, wow. That was a really highfalutin thing to say, and I'm going to pull that back because that sounds like horse shit. Identity is hard, and separating identity from ideas is hard. And I think we should all be very careful in distinguishing between an idea and an identity. I don't know this person. I'm just examining their idea in this case. I understand, Lex, that you're offering that comment in humor, but I just think I should say that for posterity. But without further ado, let's get back to Truck Stop Donkey Hole. We're watching Kevin Jordan, who's reacting to a discussion about game design relating to Escape from Tarkov. Neon, one of your favorite games, incidentally. And he explained a concept called Truck Stop Donkey Hole, which is a phenomenon where gamers want to skip right to what they think is the point of a gaming experience. They want to get right to the fucking and not do any of the wooing. So Kevin Jordan is essentially a romantic.
Let's keep watching, though. Kobe! That's right.
Imagine that scenario I was talking
He did say he wanted Pesley to be his daddy. I mean,
about before, where like your buddy's like, all right, I'm going in, and he runs into factory, and you hear like gunshots and an explosion, and you're like, Dan, you know, and there's like no answer. You're like, fuck, he's dead, right? Like, that is, oh god, that's so.
So the other thing I'll mix into this is that people aspire to be Pestily. They aspire to be Veritas, right? And in competency at the game.
yeah.
And so these guys have large communities of people that want to be like them, and sometimes that comes with thinking like they do, right? And mirroring or reflecting or bullhorning what they're saying every chance they get, right? And so that's why, that's why they're called influencers, right? So that's why this kind of stuff is especially dangerous for a game designer who's not thinking it all the way through, because not only is it coming from people that are prominent in the community and play at a high level, but it's also being reverberated by potentially thousands and thousands of people. And so before you know it, the team is being bombarded by this idea that we have to do this because thousands of people are saying it. But again, a good game designer will be able to parse that and be able to say, okay, this is one person saying that, and this is why they're saying that, and this is where they're coming from, but I'm designing for a specific experience in mind. I'm designing for a broader player base than this person represents, et cetera, et cetera. So, because sometimes they're right. Like, obviously, fixing the bug where you heal forever, you don't heal properly when you hit the button, that's just a bug. It needs to be fixed, right? But changing the heal thing so that you can bounce out instantly is a game design decision, not a bug. And so the game designer has to realize that and respect that.
The other thing, now I know this is...
I had a thought about what he just said, and it just flew right out of my brain. I'm going to pause for a moment and see if I can catch it. Yes, okay, got it. Something that I've been thinking about recently, especially after reading some of Jason Schreier's older articles about the crazy shit that goes on inside of game studios, especially during crunch time. I've been thinking about the problem about the lopsidedness of communication between gamers and developers. And over the last 10 years or so, probably a little less. We've gone from a place where basically publishers controlled all of the communication about a game. Publishers controlled the information flow going to journalists. Journalists put stuff out there. Go back to like the old Nintendo Power days where the game companies are actually making the journalistic content. So, I mean, like, how fucking unbiased could that be? Now we have what Kevin's describing. Highly respected people who are gamers in the community with tons of fans to amplify their points of view. And what occurs to me is that this is fundamentally a good thing. It's good to have gamers have a loud, strong, well-represented voice at the table. And we still have publishers with those loud voices. They still like can put stuff out there, but I think that developers tend to get crushed between publishers and the voice of gamers these days. And I've been thinking about how that can be alleviated. Clearly, Kevin's one of those ways. He's out there trying to be a voice of the developer. He's saying, yep, this is an idea that's incomplete, but it's simple and it's being amplified by voices people respect. It's going to get a lot of feedback, but you have to be a strong designer. You have to have a fucking backbone and say, this is what this person thinks. And it's being amplified, and I will hear this point of view and understand it. But I will do what I think is best. And of course, on a game, it's not one person doing something. It's 100 people talking about and collaborating on getting stuff done. So it's not that fucking simple. But I just wonder if there's a way like that we can have developers have more of a seat at the public conversations that we have about games in a way that's not so hostile. I've seen people who work hard on games get eviscerated by gamers. Planetside is like the top example in my mind. The man who's put more time into Planetside than probably anyone else who's ever lived. And he is a pariah in the community to many. How do we treat other people more like people? And how do we as gamers, as developers, as gaming business people on the publisher side, all respect each other's shared humanity? That's what I want. Let's see what Kevin thinks.
It's going to be like controversial. Bum, bum, bum. I thought it was really cool how you talked about how if you could have a marker on your teammate when they're within a certain view and distance and range and there's no obstructions.
That's where everybody is going to get butt hurt.
I know, but hear me out before people freak out. I would want it only there until we can actually properly customize our looks. Right? Because right now, you have no possible way of seeing the different. You could have two players right next to each other, and it doesn't matter if they're like you, as long as they're the same faction, like USEC, it's really hard to tell. And even
it all.
But like I'm just talking literally if they're within say 15 to 20 meters and in clear line of sight, there could be like a simple little gray dot that's half transparent on them. And like I know
like the proximity loot dot is nobody ever.
I'll take a quick 2-minute break to refresh my drink. Need more caffeine. I'll be right back, folks. I got at least 2 more hours of content in me. Let's do this.
Complains about that breaks their immersion. You never fucking notice it. It just gives you an end.
But you can't take that change back. That's the thing. Once it's there, you can't take it back. It's too difficult.
Lifestyle improvements. I respect that, Nomad. It'll be on YouTube later if you want to check it out, brother. Lex reliving engineering for Gnomish Battle Chicken. AFK. That is a man who loves classic World of Warcraft. Gotta respect it.
Take back. So if they do plan on allowing people to customize their appearance more, so squad recognition is more achievable, then that's what they should be working on. They shouldn't be adding a marker. It's a short-term solution for a bigger problem, and Tarkov benefits from friendly fire.
Mandated by guild. So sweaty.
That's the other big gameplay decision. So I don't even know if they're planning on allowing squad recognition to be more available and more, to be cleaner. But I think, in total, Tarkov actually benefits from the fact that this problem they're having. Of course you don't want to shoot your friends. Of course you want to be really clean with all your shots and only hit the enemy. But but that's one of those things that it's like, when you make bad decisions and it results in bad events, that's what makes Tarkov a better overall textured experience.
So Kevin's suggesting that the lack of visual clarity is a part of the obscurity of Tarkov. Part of the skill curve. I guess you got to decide what things you want to be part of the skill curve and what kind of things can be fat that gets trimmed away. I think it's just fascinating to apply everything that Kevin says to World of Warcraft. Not seeing is a skill. Yeah. Well, I mean, every single Planetside player plays potato mode, which maximizes visibility and frame rate. I'm thinking about that idea. Yeah, I don't have enough experience with Tarkov, my hands on it, to be able to comment further, but I'm just calling that out.
So don't remove that because you're irritated. You shot your buddy or your buddy shot you.
You instantly have all the information. You know who is going to do what. And
Agreed, Lex.
You don't have that context. So the dot is a...
And this is the thing I'll reiterate. Because they're perfectionists with their level of play, right? Every tiny little failure is unacceptable, right? Because they are striving for such a high percentage of excellence. Like, a lot of this stuff to us is just like, I just want to get out of the raid alive, like we're battling at such a different level that, zeroing in on really, really fine, stuff like that is way beyond us, right? But they want to eliminate this one little problem because it's like, yeah, they still survive 80% of the time. Their survival rate is still 80%, but every once in a while they shoot their friend or their friend shoots them. And so they're trying to get rid of that last little problem,
Shave
get
it
that
down.
up to 100%. Trying to get rid of this little problem, get it up to 100%, right? And so, and that's what makes them amazing at what they do, which is operate at a high level. But again, Escape from Tarkov will suffer on the path of getting Veritas to 100% survival rate, right? And that's the difference that game designers, when watching things like this, have to take into account.
What is good for a game versus what is good for the gamers who play it? Boy, it's a tough one. Yeah.
Simple abstraction for all of
those
the information that you
mannerisms
would
and-
have in real life. So I don't even care if it's a dot. I don't fucking care what it is. If your armband blinked, I don't care. Just make it so that I have information in the game that a reasonable human being would normally have in real life. Give me some proxy for that and I'd be happy with it. It's not hardcore when you look at 3 people standing next to them that you're supposed to be fucking homies with and you don't know who's who. That's not realistic. You're just a brain dead idiot if you can't tell your buddy from another dude standing next to each other.
Another important part is this is another skill you have to develop in Tarkov that you have naturally in real life, right? Which I love. It's another way in which you can get better is with callouts, as Micro talks about. naming every building, naming every angle, right? Like, yeah, some people think that's annoying, but it makes you better. It makes you better when you properly communicate. And this is an area, and when you move together as a team and you get to know each other as a team and the way you move. And that's why some people like duoing with certain people and not other people, right? Because you get to know each other, you move the same way, you have the similar play patterns and similar mentalities that are supportive of each other's gameplay. You just work better together, and it's one of those skills you have to develop to be effective in small groups or large groups, especially in large groups. And that's great. That's a great element of the game. And so taking that out is one less thing that people have to do to be good at the game, which I don't, because that's what for a lot of people, that's what gaming's all about, is that journey of getting better at a thing, right? So taking a bunch of stuff out so you don't have to be good at that. I tell you what,
Before he continues this, Kevin is saying that there's a way to play around this problem. He's not saying it directly, but he is saying it. Rather than create visual clarity, use other tools to improve your decision making, communicate better. And communication, or the need for it, is one of those things that game design in aggregate is moving away from, because it creates more friction for people and sets the bar for access higher. And because most games today are built on a model of needing to get critical mass in order to be successful, or indeed in order to work and to make matchmaking work, it's risky to exclude people. Yeah, I'm not so sure that the idea that adding some element of visual identification in Tarkov would be a bad idea. Maybe Tarkov people can tell me if there's a problem with that. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable take. And Kevin seems to be just kind of really taking an apologistic route to defending the design choices from Tarkov, which I guess I get why he would. He I think feels the need to explain why frictional decisions, why the decisions that introduce frictions into games are made and what's good about them. I mean, this is a guy who left or who stopped working on World of Warcraft at a time where it was being shaved down majorly, and a lot of the frictional interactions, a lot of the friction of the game was being cut back to make it easier and easier for people to play, access, get to the truck stop donkey hole, basically. At least that's what I've heard so far.
You make it so you can recognize your friends, Veritas, and I'll get auto aim so that I don't have to get better at shooting targets, because you're really good at that and I'm not good at that. I'll work, I'm okay at call outs, so I'll just work on that part of my game and make it so every time I click heads like you do, and we'll be good. So
I know he's doing this tongue in cheek, but that's a bad faith counterexample. Just calling it out.
Obviously, me suggesting that is ridiculous, but I throw the opposite, and I suggest that that's also on the ridiculous side.
Even when I'm holding an angle, and then I see someone all right, this guy's about to push, okay, cool, and then
I love
he
that.
goes behind a wall, you hear gunfire, and then you hear running, and you hear running to your right and running to your left, and it's which way did you go? Their left is not your right. If you're just hearing them in Discord, you have no context. Unless they can tell you if they have exact call out for
Compass,
their exact
baby.
location, which isn't always possible, especially
Compass saves lives.
or if you're
Cardinal
in just
directions,
yeah.
yeah.
The new center building with the mounted machine guns and customs?
Just
with the
remember,
expansion?
red is
I call
north.
it Skeletor, but I don't know what it's
All
called.
those people don't have call outs for all of the
Slush
that
does,
big open
because he plays with
space.
the same people that many times.
But does he have a call that whole first main floor area? like, you could break that up into multiple. There's 2 rooms, and then there's a bunch of open space.
Yep.
He doesn't have callouts for the open space over there.
Interesting note on callouts. I did an interview with Alan Lapidus, the principal artist and lead environment artist at Rogue Planet Games, developing Planetside 2. And we had a chance to talk about the work he's doing on designing a new base coming into the game. And one of the things that he said specifically is that he wants to do more of is actually giving names to certain structures and certain parts of buildings and parts of bases, so that people can actually have a common objective call out for these things. One of the main things I had to figure out when I tried to play high level inventory Planetside last year is how to is what callouts people were using, and they're different for each group of players. There's some shared DNA there, but is it server room or is it double doors? Like that kind of stuff. And it having common names for callouts is something that could be surfaced more literally by games. Just something to think about.
There and the open space over there.
You'd be surprised,
So-
man. So the thing is, like,
I mean, I would love to know what the fuck they are, but
the thing is,
I'm skeptical.
I know we're all want things to be perfect in our video game.
Oh man.
But yeah, I do think
So Kevin is joking. He's making remarks that are a little cutting. This is what I classically see as like a little bit of a shame response in some ways. Like he seems to be a little bit upset. Commander Sirius, what's up, brother? How you doing? And welcome to the Sirius Army. We're just chilling, watching other people's content and talking about it. How are y'all doing? Just one of the things that I like to do when I watch this kind of stuff is call out what I see happening emotionally a little bit with the interaction. And Kevin's feeling a little bit defensive. Like he's feeling defensive on behalf of people, of the designers of Escape from Tarkov, is what I'm imagining. Just a sense that I'm getting, a vibe. And I hope he can settle it down a little bit, because I like the metaphor of the truck stop donkey hole. I think this is an interesting conversation, but like it to stay productive, right?
again, like I think Tarkov being punishing and Tarkov leading to disaster is actually one of its, a big part of its charm. And I don't want to see the removal of these frustrations again, so that we can eliminate the feel bads from the experience is not the right direction for this game. This game is unique and genre creating and kind of trend setting because of these elements. Not despite.
Is Twitch being weird? I have no idea what's going on with Twitch right now. Let's put it to the back of the mind.
Them. So having someone watch back the perimeter is necessary. You're talking about security? You're talking about establishing security on a location before you start looting? I give that a big ol' head scratch. What in the hell are you talking about? Well missed. I see a thing, I loot it.
runs in. I just see muzzle flashes, and then
a dude runs out.
and then the door opened, and a guy peeked his head, and I'm like, oh shit! I once half the dude in the head, and then all of a sudden, somebody runs out and starts running towards me, and it's like, he's in all black. Like What do I do, right? Like, I have no way of knowing if
That's
is
Tarkov,
clean or
baby.
if that's the guy that just happened to have similar gear as him. There's no way for him to be like, I'm coming out, because what ended up happening was he ended up in another room, and then 2 seconds later there was somebody else in another room. So when someone comes out and they say, yeah, that's me, or yeah, I'm at this room, there's like never enough context. Because what ended up happening is someone came out and I'm like, is that you? And he said, yeah, because he thought I was like, he started to heal or he mumbled or something, but I was asking about a visual cue.
Yep.
Like, is that you is not enough to answer. And he's like, yeah. So then the guy starts shooting at me. I'm like, fuck. So then I go back, heal a little bit, peek out, kill the guy in the hallway, and it was clean. Because the other guy went back in and then clean came out. And it's like, but if
What a great story. What a great story. If everything had gone perfectly, it would have been, yeah, we killed a bunch of dudes and took a bunch of loot and we got out. That's a shit story. Because they used bad comms, they had a great story.
Yeah, and bad comms is the thing. It should be identified here. Like, and Veritas is not seeming to value the skill expression in communication. Like, he thinks there's a ceiling on it, or feeling like there is. It's like playing paintball. It's way funner to shoot your friends than random people. Amen to that.
there was something identifying him in a way that, like, you would have in contextual in real life that wouldn't happen. And you can't.
Why can't games just design a way they need to communicate? Should games design a way they need to communicate? I'm the wrong person to ask that question to. Because I love the social component of video games. And I love a great robust tool like the ping system in Apex or whatever else. But man, I fear for the day when all video games have homogenized out the need to actually communicate with the humans you're playing next to. That's a bad time. That's boring to me. I think it's a loss for everyone.
Can't just fall back on, oh, well, your comms need to be better. Sure, they do, right? But that isn't an excuse for the shortcoming of a game design element. Because the game can also be better.
See, this is pure truck stop donkey hole right here. That right there is exactly what I'm talking about. The game design created an awesome story because of your comms were shit, right? And that's what it's trying to do. But what he wants is to succeed every time. He wants the story, the personal fable of, we rolled through, we slaughtered everyone, we took all their shit, and we got out without a problem, right? And he wants to do that 100% of the time, right? He doesn't expect to do that 100% of the time, but he wants to do that 100% of the time. And he thinks every time that doesn't happen, maybe there's something in the game design, right, that's not allowing me to do this, right? And so in this particular instance, it's, I can't recognize my friends. That's a game design problem. But he's forgetting that the game design, the intent there was to create a moment where if he has shit comms, he's going to shoot his friend. And he's going to fail in his mission. And he's going to have an amazing experience and story, right? And the amazing experience is a painful one, but it's still amazing. Because again, he's sharing this experience. And Pestely's like, he thought it was hilarious, right? I think it's hilarious. It's a good story, right? That's what Tarkov's trying to accomplish. And
Yes, yeah, I agree with all that. Although I wish Kevin would also respond to whether or not Tarkov should have some means of visual distinction. I don't know it well enough to comment on it, but it seems like a pretty reasonable request that Veritas is making. It seems like a pretty reasonable thing. And it wouldn't eliminate the need to communicate, but it would give I don't know. I guess the question of why not have both should be answered too. That painful story happens enough times, you quit the game. Yeah, and the idea that it created a good story is like sharing pain and sharing suffering with people is like part of the human experience. It's what you do to mitigate suffering is you share it with others. And I'm sure there are lots of other painful experiences that Veritas could have shared that would have been funny too. But that doesn't mean they weren't painful. Not all bad experiences being funny to tell about later justify them being bad. It's a broad brush to paint a generalization with. I think what Kevin's doing, but in this case, I can see why he'd say it, and I kind of agree. I don't want to get stuck on this too much longer though, because we got a little bit to go. Let's continue.
And it's succeeding, right? So leave it alone. Let it keep doing its thing.
He just said you would have shot me yesterday in the window if it weren't for my purple armband. That's actually not what happened. I tried to shoot you and I missed you because I was fully convinced based on the context that there was another guy with a purple armband. Because I went around one of the marked rooms on the barracks in the corner of reserve. I don't remember which one it was, but he went to the front door and I was like, I'm gonna go around the back. I jump in the window and kill a guy in the marked, and then all of a sudden there's somebody at the back window with a purple armband, and I'm like, holy shit. And I turn and start shooting, and then I like jump out of the way because I'm like, fuck, like I almost died. And then he's like, I saved your life. And I'm like, did you just kill the dude with the purple armband? Like, I thought that was you. And he's like, it was me. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because he went around front, I went around back, and then he didn't go in. He came all the way around behind, and there was
That's
a
a good
guy out
storytelling.
front shooting me, and he saved my life. It's like, but the whole context of the situation was fucking confusing as hell.
Another great story. And another situation of terrible comms.
All right, Kevin.
Tarkov strikes again. We've done it, everyone.
And the armband, it's something that
It helps,
some
but it
percentage of the time is going to get you killed. If it just so happens the other team is wearing a fucking red armband and you're also wearing red armband.
Do I think Battlestate Games will make any accommodation to these types of complaints? Yeah, Nikita's been impressively stalwart in the design, right? So you can never rule it out, especially over time. That pressure builds up. But I talk about game designers having the right amount of ego, you know? Not too much where they never listen, but enough where they can hold off against the swarm and the tide of people requesting changes that dumb the game down, and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stick with my original vision because I believe in it, and blah, 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 right? Which will come across as ego, right? Because the first thing people say when you don't do what they want is they start accusing you of things, right? Being an egomaniac or living in an ivory tower or, you know, whatever it is, right?
It's like Kevin speaking from experience there.
Try to chip at you in a different way, right? But Nikita's been pretty good, and I've been really impressed with.
I need to play Tarkov. Man, I need to like burrow a hole in space time and play Tarkov. It just seems like such an interesting, brutal game.
The way he responds to things so far, and again, it's been in little things that he's said all along. So, you're not supposed to have fun playing Tarkov, or games. Tarkov's not supposed to be fun, or things like, I want to when I tweak things, I want there to be enough complaining, right? Like if there's no complaining anymore, I've gone too far. I need to dial it back. So those little things make me realize that he's got a very specific vision in mind, and he's been really good so far at chasing it. So wouldn't read the subreddit. Seems like it really affects him. Yeah. At the end of the day, we're all human beings and we want to be liked. I talk about that a lot. So. It's very difficult to resist that urge, right? To just make everyone happy with you. So
yeah.
but a good game designer can.
Right? Like,
Yeah. Maybe it's okay for developers to speak by making the game. A couple things that are occurring to me. Number one, Reddit's a brutal place. I was reflecting on content from a fantastic Guild Wars 2 creator named Wooden Potatoes earlier today, where he was talking about popular community sentiment about a certain release that occurred with that game. And I pointed out to him in a comment. I rarely write YouTube comments, but I was compelled to do so in this case. I pointed out that, like, you can't look towards social media aggregation sites for polling community sentiment, because these sites have a function of amplifying the simplest ideas. They take what's simple and they make them huger than they actually are, because complicated, round, difficult, nuanced ideas cannot be easily amplified. That's what I love about Twitch and YouTube. It's a place where that kind of round examination can actually occur. That's why I'm there. It's interesting. I used to post a lot on Reddit and be pretty frustrated about the kind of response or lack of it that I would get. But the more I've done this, the more I've just stopped. I primarily use it as a news aggregator site these days. It's not a place to go if you want to discuss things. But if you want to get internet points for people agreeing with you, it's a good place to go, probably. And on the other side of it, as a developer, what sources of feedback do you take? How do you communicate your intent? In an ideal world, probably you'd be able to just focus on making your game and having the game speak for you. But I suppose it ain't that simple. Because gamers both speak with their feet, the money they spend, which is oftentimes largely invisible to consumers as a whole, and with their voices. They get both, two prongs. In fact, a lot of times the arguments that float to the top in social media aggregators are are arguments that are made by people who are not actually the big spenders or the broadest base of the game. It's just a different way of getting opinions that attracts a different type of opinion. I'm really worried about developers, guys. I gotta say, I'm really worried about developers getting crushed between publishers and gamers. The Nikitas of the world, the Rels of the world. Not everyone knows what they're doing. Not everyone it pains me how we can dehumanize others in gaming discourse, in the veil of anonymity and its strength. It's just part of why I've rejected it. Vulnerability is important. We're social animals. That's how we got to where we are as a species. It's how we did the greatest things we've ever done. So I'm able to sit in front of a metal screen and have my voice be amplified out to where all y'all are connecting from. Everyone who built these things and made this stuff suffered. Everyone suffers. Everyone's only here for a short amount of time. It's impossible to be sympathetic to everyone. It's impossible to empathize with everyone. I sometimes wish that the culture of anonymity in games would go away. I reflected on it earlier. with the ferociously Steph thing, and that maybe the solution to people being assholes is not to protect people, but it's to expose people, make them actually accountable for their behavior. The thing that keeps people well behaved in face-to-face interactions is that, like, you're in the moment accountable for what you say. Call someone an asshole, you might get hit. And certainly that'll never be something we can have in gaming, right? Can't reach through the screen to smack someone, but in the digital age, I think we're all too aware of the power of association and identity and just how quickly a person can be canceled, which is a decent counter argument for allowing things like anonymity. I don't know. My wish for social aggregator sites like Reddit is that they actually become a place where discussion can occur. My wish for folks like Veritas is that well, I guess I don't know Veritas well enough. And this has been a real sidebar. I think Kevin is doing a really incredible service to gamers by offering a voice to developers. It's one of the coolest things that's happening. He's one of a few voices that I've seen pop up in the last couple of years that I think has really starting to contribute to the possibility of broad change in the way that we talk about this medium we all love. And so maybe I shouldn't dog on Kevin for not sufficiently, weighing what Veritas is saying, and maybe just developer apologism is called for. It's kind of like when you have marginalized class protections. If people are actually at risk of marginalization, you protect them. To try to normalize opportunity. There's value in that. Of course, that's also rolls up to bigger ideas. But let us continue. I'm going to meditate on those things.
Like,
So the point I want to make is I think it's an interesting concept. I'm not really sold either way. I'm probably leaning more against it, but
I lost track too, Fane. I often do that. I just wish we could all love each other. Is there weed in that coffee, man? I don't even need it.
I actually just want more ways to customize the character in an obvious way, not just like give me, I don't know. An idea was thrown around about making you could have
Okay. I'm actually not going to talk over Pestly because he's barely contributed to this conversation. Let me go back a few seconds.
The point I want to make is
Northwestern guy gets high and talks about games. Man, yeah, brother. Right on.
I think it's an interesting concept. I'm not really sold either way. I'm probably leaning more against it, but I actually just want more ways to customize the character in an obvious way, not just like give me, I don't know. An idea was thrown around about making you could have like schmugs and stuff that would not come off. I don't know, like clothing and that. It's just I don't know the answer. But I like the idea that there's a way that I can identify. Like maybe you can make it so someone's got like a pimp walk.
A pimp walk. Then everyone's got a pimp walk. But yeah, the clothing thing is definitely interesting because then it's like, okay, now run a night mission in the rain when it's foggy, right? And it's just like these problems creep right back up when everything's monochromatic, you know what I mean? So that's just part of it, right? Stop trying to solve a problem that is actually making the whole experience more engaging, more immersive, making those decision moments more agonizing, right? It's not necessary. you're chasing a thing to perfect your experience, but you don't actually want perfection. You don't. Utopia is really boring.
Where they fucking, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Utopia is boring.
why is it that I can actually...
There's no reason why, I mean, like, there's no reason why you should lose your cosmetic items when you die.
The only thing that I can think of
I would be fine if I had to pay a 10,000 ruble tax every single fucking raid just to wear it, as long as I don't have to fucking buy it. But hey, dude, if you want something easier, you want something more convenient, you're playing the wrong game. You're not allowed to want anything to improve a feature in any way, improve the usability, improve the user experience. You're not allowed to improve any quality of life things. Otherwise, that's against the hardcore punishing nature of Tarkov.
Yeah, he's being sarcastic here, but he's damn right. Goddamn right. That's right. Quality of life for who? You know, like, we can argue forever, right? But yeah, this is what he's chasing, and I get it. I you know, I've dealt with players like this my whole career, right? But game designers gotta resist this urge, right? Because you will end up down at the truck stop.
I've always
such a
argued
branded fucking argument.
the game, the most enjoyable aspect of the game for me is being in the raid.
People want to roll their eyes, but when you're trying to build a gun and you want to get back into a raid and all you've been doing is dying, and then you get like 3 error pop-ups and you go to do a thing and the gun is too big to build and the presets...
Yeah, nobody's rolling their eyes at this part. Those are just bugs, and yeah, we all are annoyed by them and we wish they'd go away. So this isn't the part that people take objection to. People aren't like, yeah, leave the bugs in. It's super realistic, and it's important that it takes a lot of extra time to fight the UI. You know, like, nobody's really arguing
take, bugs
that.
suck.
But they are arguing that, you know, the time between raid is an important element of the overall experience.
System has all, like, you just get annoyed with all these little things, and then you finally get into a raid after waiting 10 minutes in a queue, and then you insta-die to some bullshit, and you're like, and then, so you're already fucking, that's enough to be annoyed.
This is another one of my favorite parts. Like, I have no sympathy for Veritas with his 80% survival rate, right? Like, oh, every once in a while he gets killed by some random bullshit in the first 2 minutes of a raid. I get that like 5 times in a row, right? After I've built all my kit and gone through all the annoyances that he goes through. Although I don't even have the resources and the gear to make the stuff that he makes, right? I have to put up with garbage guns and garbage armor, right? But yeah, no sympathy, right? Because most of the time he's surrounded by dudes that he's killed, and he's struggling to figure out how to put it all in his pack so he can carry all the loot out. You know, like, that's the more normal experience for him. You know, it's like, that's once in a million games for me. We're not going to count the other night before you guys say it. That was a rarity.
Right? But
That's
then
enough
you
to
go
make me
build the
quit
same,
game.
To build this, I want to just build the same kit. Like, I wanted to use that and I never got a chance to. Oh, sorry, you've bought too many of those things. Wait 3 hours and you can buy another rail or another hand grip. Or it's like,
Again, the economy matters. It matters to the experience, right? And those things are trying to create an economy-based experience. And he wants a loadout system, basically. You know, he wants, you know, Call of Duty, in and out, in and out, in and out. The old in-out that you get down at the truck stop donkey hole. But, yeah. Don't go that direction. Anyway, there's your truck stop donkey hole. Chat. Sorry the video is so scuffed, because I didn't realize there was so much in between. But there you have it. Let's play some Tarkov. You guys want to play Tarkov now? Let's go get shot.
Okay. let's reflect. Veritas has a complaint about a few systems in Tarkov that to him are things that are frustrating design that prevent him from getting to the part of the game that he likes, that he feels is rewarding. These things include animation locks when using medical devices. These include lack of visual clarity and friend and foe identification. The stuff at the end with the raid stuff, I don't understand well enough to comment on. Pestily didn't seem to have much of a take to add to this conversation, at least not that we saw. And Kevin's basic response is that elements that add friction to the design are there by intention, and we remove them at your peril. An animation lockout may feel bad, but it only feels bad if you engage in it in a way that is not skilled. And it provides an avenue for skill expression that is valid. The whole visual clarity thing, it's like, yeah, the game's a little bit hard to distinguish friend or foe, but it places a premium on communication and accurate callouts and orientation. And Kevin's basic, what I grok from Kevin is that he really understands why a game developer would want to put friction in their video game. And that Veritas really doesn't. And he doesn't know what he's asking for. You think you do, but you don't. The famous, right? And Kevin's coming in and saying, if you try to shave down the friction in your game to get to the part you like, you might be shaving down something that actually meaningfully adds to the experience in a way that you're not 100% aware of, in a way that makes the magic, that combination of factors and technology that you don't quite understand, but whose results you bear the fruits of. Or sorry, you consume the fruits of. And I think from what I heard that if Kevin were trying to be a completely impartial participant in this conversation, I think there's probably merit in talking about visual distinction. Pastely too suggested that there could be more ways to customize your look, which seems reasonable to me. Again, someone who hasn't played the game, maybe there's something wrong with that, but it seems reasonable. And Kevin doesn't really engage with the reasonability of that. He only responds to Veritas's desire to prevent the need to communicate by making it easy for him to figure out who's a friend and who's not. Kevin added a worthwhile contribution about the value of storytelling and how sometimes, and what great, I think it's worth examining what great stories in gaming come from. I think that's a tough one. Where do your best stories in gaming come from? I had a conversation with a viewer in a comment thread recently talking about how I worry about shaving down. I worry about doing things to the game of Planetside in the name of having more balanced fights, more balanced skill and faction distribution. Because part of what makes the game fun is fighting against those things and finding clever or lucky ways to deal with them. That said, there is a ceiling on that. Like, yeah, it's fun that one time you jump into an enemy Zerg and you get a whole bunch of kills with some C4 grenades or whatever it is you do in a way that's unexpected. You totally turn the tables on the on the winners, people who are going to win. But how many times do you want to be in the position of being David poking at Goliath? Once it's okay. If it's all the time, is it okay? That's a hard question to answer. How many times do you want to feel like you're overcoming a design decision in order to get an outcome? And I think Kevin's in a unique position to speak to this because he worked on World of Warcraft Vanilla. He contributed to that design, to that game, to the Burning Crusade expansion, to the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, I think to the Cataclysm expansion, but I'm not sure exactly what the timeline of his exit from the company was. And World of Warcraft is a game that over the years is a great example of something that listens to player feedback and has shaved down a lot. It's a very streamlined experience. There have been significant things that have been lost along the way in World of Warcraft. Like gear is completely soulless in WoW now. Gears are basically just stat sticks. But the upside to having that is that there's now an entire economy around running old content for transmog in order to get appearance unlocks. And there's value to that, man. How do you make your old content useful and viable, not just dead? Like WoW's got that figured out. But interesting items was the cost they paid to get that. Is it worth it? On balance, Kevin, in what I've seen, has been quite critical of modern World of Warcraft. He feels that the RPG of it has been designed out in a lot of ways, and I kind of agree. One of the popular creators for World of Warcraft retail, whose content that I listen to, is Preach. And Preach is a guy who's very much a representative of the raiding community. The people who really only focused on the high-end organized group PvE content. And I was really fascinated to hear his take on covenants. Covenants are a new feature that was introduced into World of Warcraft Shadowlands, the newest expansion that came out a couple months ago. And they force essentially players to make a choice between one of 4 factions at max level. And that choice gives you different story experiences. It gives you different cosmetic outcomes. It gives you different power outcomes. And it gives you, I'm sure I'm missing something else, different quality of life outcomes, accessibility. And each covenant has a unique combination of those for each of the player classes. And so if you like the way that Covenant A looks, but you want the power from Covenant B, you can't get both. And in recent years, World of Warcraft has given players the ability to get everything. I want the best stats, and I want this look. In order to do that, you have to make items bland stat sticks. That's what they did. So why did WoW Shadowlands bring in covenants? Add a role-playing choice back into the game in a big way that affects power? Well, World of Warcraft Vanilla was really interesting in that way, I think. World of Warcraft Vanilla, a game that Kevin Jordan helped design, forced players to engage with the game on its terms in a lot of ways. You want to get around fast? That's fine. If you have a warlock friend, you can get summoned around. If you don't, tough noogies, you're going to fly. And that's slow. Or you can have a mage. Mage can portal you from place to place. The game was designed with social dependencies in mind. Like, not every class could do everything, which is something, again, that the modern WoW game has tried to do. It's tried to give every class multiple valid expressions of gameplay, which is fucking hard. It is really hard, and worth remarking at how well they've done with that. Even though it's not perfect. But what's the cost they paid to do that? Well, the cost they pay is that classes don't feel as unique. They don't feel as warriors don't feel as warrior, rogues don't feel as rogue, priests don't feel as priest. One of the things I loved about playing warrior in World of Warcraft vanilla 15 years ago was that it was considered like a hardcore class. It was considered to be one of the harder classes to play. It was the tanking class. And although in modern times in WoW Classic, warrior has been accepted as the best meta DPS class, back in those days, DPS warriors were laughed at. It's like, yeah, you're a warrior, DPS, that's great. Bring a shield. Bring a shield. If you're a warrior in the raid, you're an off tank. And I thought that was really fun. I like getting a chance to play multiple roles. It felt like a kind of a privilege that I received as a result of putting in a ton of effort into gear and knowing my class. It was a high effort, high outcome class. Now, in WoW Classic, like the accessibility of information and the ability to communicate, the tools outside the game are so much stronger that, and the gaming community has refined itself to the point where Classic doesn't stand the test of this modern of 2020 very well. I think it doesn't stand up in the way that WoW Vanilla stood up in the early 2000s. I'm really meandering at this point. I guess what I'm trying to explore is what the aggregate effects of Truck Stop Donkey Hole are. If you allow your game to be compromised by skipping past the friction to get to the outcome, what can happen and how do you avoid it? It's a fantastic, if crude, metaphor, and I'm really glad that Kevin is out there representing game design, uncompromising game design out there. He's a guy I'd really like to talk to someday. All right. Okay. Well, okay. I know what I want to do. We got a few more things. A couple of articles I want to go over about MMO stuff. And I'm going to finish off with what I think is going to be a good one. Talking a little bit about Asmongold. Yeah, boy. Before we get there, there were a couple of articles that jumped out at me this week. One on PC Gamer, one on Massively OP. This article is written by Fraser Brown, and it's entitled, "I'm tired of waiting for the next big MMO." Speaking of big, my old haunts are too familiar. I need something new and shiny. Let's figure out what Fraser wants. Over the last few years, I've been wandering from MMO to MMO, looking for a permanent, or at least long-term place to set up shop. That place used to be Azeroth, which I diligently returned to with the arrival of each new expansion. There have been others, and I've been revisiting them as well. It's become a routine. A trip to World of Warcraft, a tour of duty in Star Trek Online, yet another alt in Star Wars The Old Republic, all of them so familiar I could play them with my eyes closed. I desperately need something new. Now more than ever, I'd really like to lose myself in another world, but the pickings are slim. The days when everyone was gunning for a piece of the MMO pie are so far behind us that even some of the genres that usurped it are on the decline. MMO isn't dead. Not with WoW continuing to rake in all these subs, or the many free-to-play MMOs that have weathered the storm. But it's definitely in limbo, and it's been there for years. Yeah, it definitely is. So, two concepts here. Number one, MMO tourists. People MMO shopping. And number two, the state of the MMO genre. my sense of the MMO genre is that it's in something of a bit of a famine state right now. And I don't know if that's because the genre is old and in need of innovation, or if it's just old and in need of replacement. Maybe it's okay that the MMOs stay niche, this old design. People still play real-time strategy games too. It's okay that's a small place in the market. I don't know what innovation could occur that would. I guess part of the reason I'm thinking that is because I've looked at the success of World of Warcraft and its decline in subscribers since, I guess, Cataclysm was its height. I think maybe Mists, and just over 10 million subs. And I don't know if a game like WoW can ever do better than that. Is the market for a game like World of Warcraft, like Star Trek Online, like SWTOR? Is the market for people who want a long-term game home to set up shop that robust? How big is this market? My sense of it is that what we've been seeing happening is games have realized that the need for an actual MMO, like a real home, a place a game to play all the time, is not as big as you'd think. And so a lot of MMOs have softened their design into these experiences where you check in periodically, which is exactly what this guy's been doing. In some ways, I think he's been playing modern MMOs the way they've started to be designed to be played. Don't be here every day. Just come when there's new stuff, and that's okay. Visit. So why does this person have an appeal towards a long-term engagement with a single thing? Keeping that one up here. Let's continue. All the MMOs I keep returning to are great. And not just because of the mountains of fond memories I've accumulated over thousands and thousands of hours, but I probably wouldn't keep returning to Azeroth if the genre had actually moved forward. I'm just making do, listlessly floating from one old MMO to the next, trying to find that spark again. Okay, now I'm just being melodramatic, but I'm definitely sick of waiting for something to wake the genre up out of this funk. I'm just making do, listlessly floating from one old MMO to the next, trying to find that spark again. World of Warcraft, like we've talked about before, was created as a refinement and an access improvement to older MMOs like EverQuest, the original. And it simplified things, made them easier to get your hands on, easier to understand. And games have been experimenting with just how accessible they can make themselves. Free-to-play models, a great expression of that. You see games like Guild Wars, where they impose a power cap that's been in place since 2013, I think. 8 years going on. I mean, how can you beat a game where you come back to it and the same gear that you grinded 5 years ago still works? It's still good enough for high-end content. How do you beat that? But then you have a game where gear doesn't really matter as much. How do you make gear matter? It's a tough thing to innovate on MMOs. In some ways, the core components of role-playing as a character who progresses over time and joins forces with others to conquer challenges. At a certain scale. So the scale of the MMO used to be like small groups and big groups. Over time, it's gone more in the direction of solo and small groups. There aren't that many MMOs that are doing big group design anymore. And it's because it turns out that I think that that big group experience is something of a niche. Because it takes a lot of work to bring big groups of people together over games. It's not easy. And people who want the kind of all-encompassing, high-demand, challenging experience are either a very tiny aging niche, or they're young people who, by and large, don't seem to be really looking towards MMOs to get their fix. In some ways, I think that the MMO genre is moving. Is generationally a bit old. I'm just noodling around. I wonder what y'all think. And also, one of the things about MMOs I think tends to be interesting is the passivity of people who play these games. One of the reasons that games have designed themselves into like these visitation experiences where you're instructed to kind of check in every few months when new story content is available or whatever, is because the need for passivity endures among the broad spectrum of gamers. It's interesting in a medium like gaming, where what's unique about it is agency. A lot of what people want is like a popcorn experience. Like, they don't want to work too hard on their build. They don't want to work too hard to communicate. And I think communication is one of those big things. Like Veritas was calling out when we were looking over the Truck Stop Donkey Hole video. Why would a person like this be shopping for MMOs? That's what I'm asking myself. The absence of a shiny new MMO to distract me from, well, everything is not exactly surprising. Expensive to make, expensive to maintain, and facing intense competition from countless live service games. It's not a risk a lot of publishers are willing to make. We've seen indie studios make the attempt, but those that do actually come out tend to disappear and usually lack the big teams and additional infrastructure, like good customer support that a successful MMO requires. Good customer support? Yeah, okay. Amazon's New World is undoubtedly the best known upcoming MMO, but it's been repeatedly pushed back, possibly a victim of reported mismanagement, which also led to Crucible's very short life. It doesn't inspire much confidence. I wasn't all that convinced before the delays, though, because it's all very familiar. Crafting, player housing, territory control PvP, dynamic economies, and player intrigue. It's a list of all the features nearly every sandbox MMO promises. Yep. All these things are appealing, apart from maybe crafting, which I've done enough of in this lifetime. Oh man, I so resonate with that. But nothing we've seen even comes close to approaching exciting. The total absence of any identifiable personality or clear aesthetic doesn't help either. I'm not holding my breath. Yeah. And New World is desperate to appeal to the masses. It's desperate to appeal to the masses. I think that at the end of the day, all we can expect is a refinement of existing MMO things from that game, probably. I'll probably play it or try it at least. It looks fun. I enjoyed playing the public alpha or whatever it was called earlier this year. Back in September 2020. But, and I guess another game that's out there is also Ashes of Creation, which I'm surprised he doesn't mention. Or she. It's been so long since a new MMO swallowed up all of my time that I'm not even all that sure that I want from one anymore. Definitely, and I cannot stress this enough, not something survival adjacent. Actually, I take that back. I know exactly what I want. A good superhero MMO. DC Universe Online and Champions Online temporarily filled in the gap left by City of Heroes, but now they're old and tired, and there's nothing taking their place. How have we gone through all these Marvel movies without a good superhero MMO? The Avengers is not a good consolation prize. Well, didn't the Avengers put out a live services game recently that completely flopped? Maybe this person's looking for filling up too much of their experience with one game. I'm also looking for a feeling as much as I am an actual tangible game. I want to pack up my bags and go on an adventure where I don't know what's coming. Where it's not just the old MMO routine. but isn't grasping at the survival crafting trend either. I want to look at the screenshot and think, fuck, I need to be there right now. Get the hell out of here with yet another nondescript forest. MMOs have become defined by a few different formulas. Survival MMO, sandbox MMO, theme park MMO. But all these things initially come from experiments and pushing a nascent genre in different directions. I'm ready for another experiment. I'll drink to new experiences. I just don't know if MMOs are the place to look for them. WoW has pretty much reinvented itself a few times, to the point where it now supports entirely separate vanilla servers through WoW Classic. But one of the best examples of how adaptable MMOs can be is Guild Wars. The first game had a conservative PvE campaign, but was really all about PvP, what it excelled at. You played Guild Wars to beat other players up, or in my case, get beaten up. The sequel was no less enthusiastic about PvP, but in every other regard, it was a dynamic transformation into an elaborate story-driven MMO that's all spitting out yarns. On top of that is the exceptional weapon and skill system, which offered an entirely new way to build your character. So why is he not playing Guild Wars? I'll amplify this. Guild Wars does a great job of being a storytelling MMO. But it pays a price for that. Yeah, I think what we're kind of seeing is that the MMO genre, like, is not as big as we all thought it was. Probably. At least not with current technology. Not as big as we all hoped it was 15 years ago. He spelled out 3 different types: sandbox, theme park, and survival. Guild Wars is definitely the theme park variety. This person wants something unexpected, but MMOs are such big, risky projects. I'm not sure if you can go to them for things that are unexpected anymore. It's like going to an Avengers movie, a Marvel movie, and wanting to see something unexpected. Like, you don't dwell in existing archetypes and existing IPs and hope to be surprised. I remember watching The Last Jedi. I was so thrilled that Rian Johnson was maybe doing something different with the Force, the direction of the franchise. And then the franchise convulsed out Rise of Skywalker to say, no, this is what you thought it was. Please like us. Formulas that have worked in the past, like MMOs, resist transformation sometimes. At this point, though, I'll really take anything. Their bare minimum is that I've got some friends playing it. There's something comforting about going on Twitter and seeing all your buds posting about their progress through the same game. Otherwise, all your buds. So this person wants something that is enough of a mass market success that all of their friends are playing it. What this person wants is a $1 billion IP. Like, they want something. I mean, should this person be playing Fortnite? Well, they are expressing a common sentiment. It's hard to respond to because I feel like the whole MMO shopper tourist mentality is one that's rooted in a false premise of trying to seek transformation and excitement through something that you can predict. It's like rewatching The Office for the 10th time and wanting it to feel like it was new again. If you want to get that feeling again, you can't get it by watching The Office. You have to watch something you've never seen before. Take a chance. Can MMOs transcend the trinity that this person laid out? Survival, theme park, sandbox? Sandbox seems like it has the most potential, but the problem with sandbox MMOs is that they don't get mass appeal. The more agency that's required to enjoy a game, the more of a niche game it's going to be. Wow, I mean, gaming's become a big hobby, and to get a chunk of that hobby, you have to appeal to a pretty broad base. All right. Continuing. Otherwise, is it a new MMO? Cool, sign me up. And for all the challenges inherent in designing an MMO and all the games that haven't been able to maintain a high enough population, there is still demonstrably a huge audience for MMOs. These people don't all vanish over the last few years. With the launch of Shadowlands, WoW managed to get back to player numbers it hadn't enjoyed in a decade. And judging by how many people are reading articles about New World, there's a hunger for more of them. Perhaps naively, I assumed that shortly after everyone tired themselves out heralding the death of the genre, something would appear that would get things back on course. Realm Reborn certainly seemed like it might, launching in 2013 after the genre's most lively period had already ended. But it ended up being more like the last big MMO launch rather than an inspiration for a new wave. Now we're stuck in the past, with the most exciting MMO developments being fan studios trying to resurrect the dead classics. I'm ecstatic that some of my favorite games are being given a second life, but I don't want to be stuck looking backwards. There it is. You wrote an article talking about wanting to be thrilled by an MMO, but you don't want to be stuck looking backwards. I guess I'll just have to keep waiting, hanging out in my old haunts, longing for a glimmer of the future. It's probably not going to come from Amazon, but I refuse to believe there isn't something out there waiting to appear and make us sign away our lives for another 1,000 hours. It's just hard to keep up the faith, especially when I'm also tiring myself out a torch for real-time strategy and point-and-click adventures. Look, I'm a Scott 11 underdog. So there have been a few times where I thought I was done with MMOs. Back in 2014, I've been without a gaming PC for 3 years. I thought I might be done with gaming altogether, but I wasn't. When I got a gaming PC again, the first game I played was Planetside. And then one day, randomly, my wife saw me looking at some footage for a game called Guild Wars 2 and said she wanted to play it, which is a very weird thing for me to hear because she wasn't a gamer. But I looked up if it would run on Macs, and sure enough, there was a Mac client for Guild Wars. And we gave it a try, and next thing I knew it, we had each thrown away 1,000 hours of our year playing Guild Wars 2 together, and it was a fucking blast. I played that game for the experience playing together, and then after she left, I played for the sake of the game for another year or two before I too got to the end of it for me. I still keep tabs on Guild Wars. I'm interested in its development, even if I'm no longer invested in it as a player. That's not true. I should say my investment in it as a player has been reduced over time. And it's a game that caters to that check in every once in a while way of playing, which makes it easy to be distant. I jumped back into World of Warcraft Classic in 2019 because I wanted to see what was going on there. And I poured a serious amount of time into it over the course of 2 months and change, and then I left it. Said, okay, I got to 60 with a friend. I helped a guild clear Molten Core and kill Onyxia. I had what I wanted. I don't need to retread clearing all the raid content that I cleared before 15 years ago. I don't need it. I feel like I got what I wanted out of this, which was a fun experience and where I learned a lot about what WoW Vanilla did well, and about the way that gaming has changed WoW Vanilla. I've gotten back into Shadowlands with a similar approach. How has World of Warcraft changed in the decade that I've been gone from it? What is it trying to do? How is it hearing its fans? Where is it listening to them? And where is it trying to stick to an identity that perhaps a lost identity? I think I might be getting to the end of my time playing Shadowlands. Learned a lot, though. It's okay for things to come and go. It's okay for friendships to come and go. It's okay for games and people to come and go from your life. The idea of having one relationship, one game that carries you through forever and ever is comforting, but it can be a sign of stagnation. It's okay to reminisce over the past. But I don't think the MMO genre is one that needs to be mourned over. I think that the idea of having a game that you logged into every day and it was your game is kind of an old-fashioned idea. That's really pre-social media in many ways. iPhone was released in what, 2000? Was it 2007, 2009? Sometime in the late 2000s, years after World of Warcraft released. It gets easy to be online and connected to your friends all the time now. Back when WoW released, that was a unique thing. Being part of a shared world experience was kind of novel. It's not anymore. The world is shared. It is virtual. I don't think we should look to the MMO genre for major innovation anymore. I'm excited about MMO adjacent stuff that comes out. I keep thinking that Destiny could be something pretty amazing, and that it's not. But my hope for Fraser Brown, who's the sole inhabitant of the PC Gamer's mythical Scottish office, is that he finds something that helps him recapture that fascination. Man, I don't know if MMOs are it. Okay. That's one article. We got one more. Do MMO players secretly just want another WoW? Massive VOP does these panelist style articles a lot where they ask for a couple paragraphs from a few of their different contributors. This is composed by Bree Royce. Pretty fresh. I'm blocking ads. It's true. Last week, there was a provocative discussion on the MMORPG subreddit about the genre. I don't want to get tangled up in the whole argument about failed MMOs and why people play the successful ones that aren't WoW. But I do want to home in on the overall premise. I've become thoroughly convinced people don't want a new MMO, but instead want another World of Warcraft, the OP maintains. Let's chew on that for this week's Massively Overthinking. A lot of our writers have played WoW rather extensively, but of course we also play a lot of everything else since we're focused on the genre and on one game within it. In your heart of hearts, are you just looking for another WoW? And do you think most MMO players are doing just that? Another WoW is going to be a bit of a Rorschach. We can anticipate that, I think. WoW doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Let's see what Andrew Ross has to say. Not at all. What I've been enjoying about MMORPGs, especially Pokemon Go, my time with Walking Dead, is they give you a way to connect to real-world places and people while offering online connections to support that. I need games that are more social, but WoW mostly felt social and that it had a high user base. Yeah. I feel like it's a reason a lot of people go back. Objectively speaking, I haven't been excited about a WoW expansion since Lich King, but many smaller MMOs attracted me due to features. That being said, I do think there's a big split in the MMO community. I softly suggest there's a large amount of people who started MMOs in WoW. They've been looking for a new one specifically because that was their first, and that's fine. That's my relationship with my first MMO, Asheron's Call. The difference is that Asheron's Call was a small niche product. There were very few people I knew IRL who played it. I actually avoided some of those people because I enjoyed the game features first. That's weird. I think that's where a person who likes social RPGs but avoids their IRL friends in games. Okay. Maybe changing over time. I think that's where other people come from. They want a game with unique features they can bring people to, not necessarily just a game they can play with their friends. I go so far as to argue that there's more of a nostalgia camp where people are just looking for their old MMOs with updated graphics, and a feature camp, people are looking for the new next big thing. Yeah, couple points. I have no experience with ARGs. Pokemon Go bounced off me completely. I get the hook though. It's pretty interesting. About the second paragraph about the split. I think it's healthy to look at World of Warcraft as much of a phenomenon as it was in the early 2000s. Compared to today's numbers of players, it's something of a niche, like Asheron's Call was in those days. There's this idea of games that are feature first versus friends first. There is like a phenomenon of like social gaming that occurs. Like, you look at the games like Among Us, games like what was the one where you played as a Teletubby? Fall Guys. Experiences like that are really social experiences that happen to be over games. And you have games that foster social experiences. I can't get my friends to play the same multiplayer games that I play. World of Warcraft is perhaps distinct in that it has a broad enough base that I'm likely to be able to play with someone who I know. Whereas most other games I choose to play, like a game like Planetside, no one I know outside of the game, like no one I know from my outside life is interested in playing that game. I can't get them interested. It's a niche. He goes so far as to argue there's more of a nostalgia camp where people are looking for old MMOs with updated graphics, and a feature camp looking for the next new big thing. People wanting to be thrilled by new gaming experiences versus people who want to recapture the feeling of the old MMOs. Yeah. You can't go home again. You can't go home again. Sad but true. Andy McAdams. The answer is complicated. Convoluted yes and no. I'll start with the easier of the two. No. I don't want another carbon copy of WoW. I don't want the RPG on Rails experience WoW has cultivated. I don't want the LOL, Elite, Raid Mythics Plus, or GTFO Theorycraft, the fun out of the game mentality. I don't want a world that's dominated by combat as the first, last, only activity in the game. If that's what you're talking about with another WoW, then no, I don't want that thing. Anyone else see a little bit of truck stop donkey hole in those complaints? While it's true that WoW's success is much a result of circumstance as anything else, it's most assuredly reproducible. You only need to watch the ebb and leap of innovation in other technical genres to see the truth there. I'm a technologist by day. I know some of the tech out there completely turn the MMO genre on its head, moves to the next epoch of MMO gaming. I don't know what the hell this person's talking about. WoW's success, as we saw earlier on, discussed by Josh Strife Hayes, you cannot make a new WoW. Like, you can't kill WoW by making another game with technology. I don't know. I don't think this is well qualified enough to make sense. I don't think Fortnite is a genre defining in the same way that WoW was, because it's not a sticky experience. It's able to create and discard shallow, hollow, and temporary interactions between strangers. Unless Fortnite starts to innovate and be more than that, it will start to fade because anyone will tell you that relationships are the key to success in any business. In an MMO, a community will make or kill the game, and in some cases, resurrect the game. I also reject the notion that WoW is horrible for existing because the genre around it let greed subvert their own. Okay, there's too many ideas here. It's built to create and discard shallow, hollow, and temporary interactions between strangers. Yeah, so this tendency to have transactional social experiences is something that has emerged because companies have identified that multiplayer gaming makes people more sticky, but they also know that people who don't have friends need to be able to participate too, so they make it possible to play with strangers. And what that results in is that by weight, most people play with strangers for some fucking reason. Because they want to play a game first, not be with their friends. But, yeah, this is a very, like, unless Fortnite starts to innovate and be more than that, it will start to fade because anyone will tell you that relationships are the key to success in any business. Right. I think this person is missing the point, missing the idea, the fact, though, that gamers form relationships not just with other gamers, but with games. And those relationships are sticky. And I think people are sticky with Fortnite. I think they're missing a part of the equation. I also reject the notion WoW is horrible for existing because the genre around it let greed subvert their creativity. Holding WoW accountable for the actions of others simply because WoW exists doesn't make sense. If it had not been WoW, some other game that had become genre defining would have launched us into the next epoch of MMO gaming. It would have looked different, but the impact on the genre would have been ultimately been the same. It's like saying the genre would have been better off if WoW had just had a good sense to be less good at what it did. I don't know if this person's argument makes sense to me, but I definitely agree that WoW is not horrible for existing. Like, I don't even know how to respond to that. So why do I want a new WoW? Because the genre's been stagnating over the last 5 years or so. I want a new WoW because the game we are playing today is fundamentally the same game we were playing 15 years ago. Sure, it's got a new paint job, a new hairdo, and this really amazing nail polish, but ultimately the core of the game hasn't changed. The MMO genre needs that pivot point. The genre needs its own WoW moment because without it, we'll continue to limp along this path of antiquated ideas and gameplay loops that are successful more through inertia of players than any real enjoyment that they might provide. The potential for including things like machine learning for storytelling, natural language processing into our NPC interactions. This person's a real technologist. Virtual reality and blockchain. How the hell is blockchain going to make better MMOs? To create truly unique, one-of-a-kind items means that we could just vastly more... That's without even mentioning the less sexy, but just as important technical leaps around virtualization, performance, and efficacy. This person is painting such a broad picture that I don't know what it is they're trying to say. Machine learning for storytelling? Will a person ever mistake a generated story for a written one? Natural language processing into our NPC interactions. Again, same thing. This person's talking about building Alexa into World of Warcraft. Like, the technology is not even close to what gamers would need it to be. Virtual reality. Is this person like in the 1990s? Okay. Yeah, I don't get this. This sounds like a person who hasn't actually played the game in 15 years. But yeah, new technology will drive new gaming experiences. This is something that Gabe Newell has talked about, actually. I guess we can just leave that at that. Ben Griggs has nothing to add to Tyler's response. Nail Meathead. Brown and Royce. Am I looking for a new theme park MMO that unwittingly derails innovation for a decade to come? That's held back creatively by dated quest design and copycat mechanics, and the rate or die mentality of its lead devs, a game that survives largely by sheer momentum and critical mass? Hell no. This person is bitter. Unwittingly derails innovation. The idea that something can be so successful that it derails innovation is horseshit, unless you're doing something that is anti-competitive. It's horseshit. Held back creatively by dated quest design and copycat mechanics. Is quest design holding back World of Warcraft? Copycat mechanics, yeah. I mean, you learn from other games. Raid or die, yeah, okay. Raid or die, I think, is a problem. It's kind of like the game has like refined its audience down to what it does best, which is the raiding experience, and everything else is just like. In fact, I think it's pretty cool how well maintains the things, the parts of its game that have been there forever, but are not like the thing that it does best. Like the fact that we still have WoW arenas, the fact that we still have mythic dungeons, despite the fact that there are other games that do these things better. Anyway, I'm just taken aback by how bitter that comment is. Am I looking for a creative MMO with massive money behind it that can blast the doors off the genre with innovation and polish? A blockbuster that will bring players together from all corners of the gaming, be a cultural phenomenon, and drag money and talent back into the virtual worlds? Hell yeah. Was World of Warcraft that, though? Was World of Warcraft a creative MMO with massive money behind it? I mean, it was cashing in on like existing IP with Warcraft. The original team that made it was like, what, 30, 40 people? And they were trying to refine down the elements of EverQuest they like to make it more accessible. Is it really that creative? I'd say it was effective, but was it creative? I think combining Blizzard polish and aesthetic and art with an MMO design that it borrowed from other games was great. Was it creative? I don't know. Blast the doors off the genre with innovation and polish. Again, did it innovate heavily? Or did it borrow effectively? The rest of it I agree with. I have no doubt some folks are looking for another WoW, and depending on which type of WoW they're looking for, they're unlikely to find it, which they keep finding any backup in WoW, which is frankly fine. Play what you love, people. I don't know Brianna, but she seems like someone who like hasn't actually like didn't play the game back in the day. Didn't understand what it was, what it did. A bit of a miss on that comment. Chris Neal, personally, I'll not be taking this one at face value if people want another WoW theme park. Smart. And instead go with the angle of people want what WoW did in terms of refining existing MMORPG design decisions to an aerodynamic shape. Chris knows what's up. That's what WoW actually did. In which case, yes, I would like that very much. There are a lot of great ideas from several different games that if they were put together and polished, would make for an awesome MMO. I would love the combat of WildStar, the presumed guidance into PvP gameplay from Warhammer Online, and some of the crafting and loops from something like Crowfall, the creativity and building customization of survival sandboxes, and the brilliance of Final Fantasy XIV's dungeon and raid design, all in a smooth, creamy sauce in one game. If the question's asking if I would want another WoW-like theme park, no thank you. There are already too many titles to try to parrot that. I don't want more of the WoW formula. I want something to use the WoW design ethos, which is to take what's good and make it all part of a single compelling package. I guess the question is like going back to the idea that you can't just be as good as the existing juggernaut to displace it. Would doing that, would bottling up all the best design principles of MMOs over the last 15 years actually create something that could make people look away from World of Warcraft? Like, is that even possible? I kind of think no. I don't think you can rebake the same ingredients into something that can do what WoW did. I think you need to go outside of the genre expectations to do that. Need new technology like that crazy blockchain guy was saying. But very level-headed response from Chris Neal. Really respect that. Elliot Lefevre. I can't speak for everyone, but I think the premise here is both right and wrong. And the big problem is tying it to World of Warcraft itself. Lots of people aren't looking for another WoW simply because they don't think of wanting more of WoW itself. But the fact of the matter is there's a certain group of roiling, great word, Roiling discontented players who are looking for a second WoW in the sense of a new game makes me feel what WoW did when it was new and surprising and ubiquitous. Because that's the real issue, to an extent. Even as WoW, the game is still there, a lot of people are looking for its replacement just the same. And they're looking for it in a way that's never going to be found, merely because WoW was in many ways a product of its time and circumstances. Wise. A lot of the things that WoW did were done by other games before and after, but WoW combined a lot of these elements into one package that managed to slot into cultural ubiquity and become something that for a brief time almost everyone seemed to be playing. The quality of the game and its first 2 expansions are well known enough that it's almost ridiculous to even talk about them now. And yet, that was also a product of time, space, and circumstance. It was a cultural touchstone in a way that only a couple of MMOs have been beforehand, and it was universal in a way that games haven't really been since. It was a moment in time that exploded, had an impact, and then receded. True. Realistically, there have already been other WoWs in the sense of online games everyone seems to be playing or have an opinion on, with Fortnite and Overwatch and League of Legends all acquiring similar cultural cachet during their own time, only to recede somewhat as the years went on. But there are a lot of people looking for another game that will bring back that strange and ephemeral sensation of a game that's really amazed them, and it might not even be WoW itself. The problem is ultimately chasing a time and a sensation, not an actual game. Even if WoW stopped being designed badly, and I've been talking about its design problems for years, none of those fixes would make this year 2008 again. Therein lies the rub. Shit. Nail on the head. Elliot Lefebvre, very smart comment. WoW took existing working ideas that had not yet been packaged up in a polished, mass marketable way and brought them together at a time where coming together online was unique and special. That's a perfect storm situation. In order to kind of duplicate that, you need to take all the elements of it. You need to have a genre of game where there have been good ideas that have been done well in different ways, but have never been packaged up in a way that can be broadly appealing. Maybe survival games are like that. I mean, I just don't like survival games, so maybe I just think that none of them appeal. I guess Minecraft is huge. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But yeah, you need something that has had examples that were good and appealed to niche audiences, but lacked mass market appeal because of packaging. And you need to have it be introduced in a way that actually changes the way people see games. WoW did that. WoW came out at a time where people were still transitioning off of dial-up into broadband internet. But because WoW was so chill, it had that 400 millisecond batching time, you could actually play it on dial-up internet. Trying to duplicate that is like trying to duplicate Steve Jobs designing the iPhone. I think the only way to duplicate that is to chase something that you know is good. I don't think you can duplicate it by trying to make a new MMO. I think that design language is laden with old ideas. And they've already been packaged up in a package that people can like. You can play it today. Actually, you can play any flavor of it you want. The old version or the new version. A few more comments. Justin Olivetti. If we're being honest, I think there's definitely an attractive factor to an MMO, being familiar and comfortable. WoW helped to cement a certain structure and design MMOs that we all know intimately at this point. So future games trying to lure in players who love and grew up on this sort of game have a balancing act. To not hew too closely to be a purposeless MMORPG that will immediately get slapped with a WoW clone label, but not to drift so far away as to be alien in design and function. Iterate, evolve, but don't throw out the stuff that actually works well, like an array of options, a high level of polish, and easy to understand, hard to master design, tight combat, artistically appealing worlds, and appeal to fun. Yeah, it won't be WoW if you do that, but you can make a good game. New World might be that, if they get lucky. MJ Guthrie. No freaking way. I can't even stand the original and hate what it has done to the genre and developmental creativity. So there's no way I would ever look for another to play. In fact, the more like it another game is, the less I like the other game and the more I'll turn away from it. Harumph. Great games are ruined trying to be like it, and the possibility of good games are lost due to the constant attempts to be like it. Another bitter respondent. As for what most MMO players want, I can't answer for them. What I can say is it seems when games do anything innovative, like players claim they want, it appears to backfire on most studios as players riot. People want to play WoW, then play WoW and enjoy it. If you want to play something different, play something different. That's my plan. Now, it'd be lovely if there were more things that were actually different. A sentiment I can agree with. All right, a couple more. Sam Cash. So I think there's somewhat is a desire for another WoW. I don't mean in the way that players want a game just like it. Obviously, that's not true, judging by all the failed clones. I certainly don't want to play WoW. What I do want is a game that really grabs players from all around and brings them together in a virtual world. I want that hype and excitement, that experience of finding out that the friend or coworker I've known for years had no idea they played MMOs, is actually a serious gamer when it comes to this game. It seemed to grab the attention of people from outside just the MMO genre and made them gamers. That's how it looked to me. If we can have that again, I'd be pumped. Yeah, going back to the idea of what it takes to recreate that confluence of cultural relevance that WoW achieved. And it's not as simple as making good MMO. Not anymore. Maybe 10 years ago it could have been. But WoW continued to iterate. WoW replaced itself. I don't know about most, says Tyler Edwards, but I definitely think there's a significant and vocal section of the population that just want WoW all over again. Yeah. The most obvious version of this is people who keep asking for WoW 2, despite the fact that constant revamps and overhauls make WoW's current incarnation WoW 2 for all practical purposes. True. I think these are mostly people who are burnt out on the game nowadays, but want to recapture the magic they felt in the past. Classic isn't enough. They want the joy of experiencing it all fresh again. They want the same game, but new. Alas, it's an impossible goal. Then there are those who are less hung up on WoW specifically, but are still hoping for another game that's as much of a blockbuster, genre-defining hit. Unfortunately, WoW's breakout success was more of an accident of history than anything else, so it's very unlikely another MMO will ever equal it. It's not a sign that the genre is dead or dying, but that it's matured. It's not new enough to make the game the same cultural splash again. Yeah, matured, that's a good word for it. I actually like that better than the boom-bust language I've been using to describe it. It's a mature genre. There's not a lot of room for innovation in it. For better or for worse, I think Fortnite is the closest we've ever going to get to a second coming of WoW. It's been a genre-defining hit in the same way. That's the only way you get mega blockbusters like that. Take a new genre, polish it, dominate the space, and become a cultural touchstone. There's not really the same potential to build momentum in a genre. And so what was the unique moment that Fortnite leveraged? I think it must have been streaming. With WoW, it was being in a shared online world that was new to the world at large. With Fortnite, I feel like streaming might have been that thing. I wonder if you can chart the popularity of streaming with Fortnite's release. I should have a look at that. There's not really the same potential to build momentum in a genre that's already established with players entrenched in their various games of choice. This sadly leads to a lot of embittered MMO players with unrealistic expectations who treat every new game as a failure for not accomplishing what WoW did. For my part, the last thing I want is another WoW, not because I don't like it, but because we already have a WoW. I want new games to establish their own unique identities, not waste their energy aping what came before. This is a fantastic conglomeration of MMO sentiment. I love it. I'm really glad Massively OP took the time to get responses from people on it. Kudos to these folks, especially to the few really standout comments in my mind. Elliot Lefevre leaving a brilliant comment. Chris Neal as well. Overall, the question of do MMO players secretly just want another WoW? I think the answer is yes. what they don't want is the game of WoW. What they want is a game that takes existing good ideas that have not been packaged up in an immature genre, packages them up in a polished fashion, and introduces it in a way at a time that changes the way people can look at games. When World of Warcraft came out, there was no social media. Coming together over an online world was an actually unique as hell compelling hook. It was polished, easy to get into, and that catapulted it. But now it's mature. And there is a new WoW. It's called World of Warcraft. The game has replaced itself over the years. I really feel that I've succeeded in beating this topic quite to death tonight. We've talked about why you can't kill World of Warcraft. We've talked about Truck Stop Donkey Hole and the trap that players fall into of trying to remove friction from their games. And World of Warcraft is, I think, arguably a cautionary tale of that. We've talked about why people are tired of waiting for the next big MMO, and we've talked about why people secretly just want another MMO. Let's pause and evaluate where we are. I am running out of voice rapidly. Let's consider. Yeah. I think this is a good place to leave it for tonight. Well, thanks for everyone who is watching this video on YouTube. Thanks for everyone who turned out live on Twitch. This has been really fun. The third week of Basement Side Weekly, an experiment where I sit down and talk to y'all about what I'm seeing in gaming that interests me. And we're all just going to try to be better gamers, better humans as a result. At least that's what I would like to have happen. And if I can move the needle even one iota, I would find that immensely gratifying. Thanks to Neon Light and to Commander Sirius for the raids. Those folks who've stuck around, nice to meet y'all. I'm Deeg. I do this kind of stuff. And I also do long-form interviews with gamers, developers, and the like. I have one coming up on Thursday. I should promote myself. I'll be talking to the creator of Planetside 2 Alerts, which is a platform that helps players engage with Planetside and understand stats about the game related to alerts in the game. And we're going to talk all about Planetside and about some of the awesome community creations that have raised the bar for people playing that game and unlock new things that community can do. It's going to be fun. It's happening on Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, and it'll be here, live on Twitch. I think that's it. Thanks, y'all. Good night.